Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. I'd like to welcome you to the third edition of the African EduTech Conference, being hosted by the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce in partnership with EduFirst Nigeria Limited. This year, we will be building on the foundation laid in previous editions with respect to education and technology, a marriage that has become real in modern times. Furthermore, the relationship between corporate organizations and educational institutions has become very important, to the National Employment Index. Our theme this year, education and technology, bridging the gap, highlights the need to streamline education and technology in order to ensure that the pathway to functional adaptive education in Nigeria and indeed Africa is well laid out. This will enable improvement in the productivity of the African workforce for sustainable growth. Thank you for being a part of this year's EduTech Conference. We will now observe the national anthem of Nigeria and Great Britain. Thank you very much. Please allow me to share a couple of guidelines with you. As you can see right there on the screen, if your Zoom volume is too low, check your system volume. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on YouTube channels. Also, to comment and have discussions, you can use the chat icon. And then if you have questions, please submit your questions via the Q&A icon. And only these will be answered during the question and answer session. I will now invite the President and Chairman of Council of the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Bisi Adeyemi, to give the welcome address. Madam President.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adeyemi. Good morning, patrons, council members, and members of ESCO, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by saying how delighted I am to formally welcome you to the third edition of the African EduTech Conference, themed Education and Technology, Bridging the Gap, organized by the Learning and Education Trade Group of the NBCC in collaboration with Education First Nigeria Limited. I especially commend the combined team of both organizations for the time and effort that went into putting together this timely and extremely relevant event. The NBCC is the foremost bilateral chamber in Nigeria and was established 43 years ago to promote trade and investment between Nigeria and Britain. The chamber is affiliated with British Chambers of Commerce, which provides access to a network of 53 chambers of commerce across the UK and 72 other international affiliates. Membership of the NBCC is currently about 400 top corporate organizations from all sectors of the economy. This conference seeks to explore the role of technology in the education sector and showcase the innovation and creativity of our young people. It also provides a platform for government, regulatory agencies, and other stakeholders in the sector to interact and share experience on how technology and innovation can be deployed to transform the sector. With over 70% of its population under the age of 30, Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world. The infrastructure deficit has resulted in a significant skills gap amongst our young population. A key factor that is shaping the future of education in Africa and indeed the world is technology. With mobile penetration now standing at over 50%, the story of increasing technology adoption in Africa continues to break records, no doubt driven by the young mobile-first generation. Like in many parts of the world, children in Africa are becoming digitally literate at a very early age, further underlining the massive opportunity technology presents for education. It is therefore imperative that as a nation, and indeed as a continent, we rethink our vision of the future of education and take practical steps towards adopting a blended learning approach to reposition education in Africa and ensure our students remain competitive in the age of globalization. I am delighted to welcome all our speakers to this conference and am confident that this eminent assembly of subject matter experts will provide diverse and illuminating perspectives which would open our minds to the tremendous opportunities for growth and development in the education sector. I'm also profoundly grateful to our gold sponsor, Stanbic IBTC, for the support, which is a laudable demonstration of the bank's commitment to the upliftment of education standards in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. I'm also happy to note that we will be hearing directly from students as they showcase their technology prototypes. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention and wish us all a productive session. I will now invite Mrs. Oluremi Bajiru, Regional Manager, Stanbic IBTC, to share a keynote address. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Good day, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to deliver the keynote address at this year's edition of the African EduTech Conference. I am excited events of COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our education ecosystem to a large extent, but in it were inherent opportunities. Several things that seem impossible have now become a reality. Teachers now teach virtually, and students can now learn from the comfort of their homes with the help of tech gadgets. This has indicated that we are indeed open to more innovation that technology has to offer our education system. The disruption and innovative solution have led to fresh ideas which have resolved several issues and resulted in visual enhancement and displayed during the lockdown when learning continued despite the pandemic. In recent times, technological innovation have become a driving force for growth in various sectors, and education is not left out. The sole objective of employing education technology is to enhance students' overall learning experience. Over time, the education system has witnessed the development and utilization of different technologies ranging from cloud computing to speech to text options, learning analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics, among others. With this in mind, Stanbic IBTC has targeted education as a key area to focus. We understand that the pace of technology is fast accelerating as we embrace more sophisticated platforms to disseminate educational materials. There is need to have more tech and digital inclined students and graduates. To this end, we recently kicked off our digital skill empowerment program, DISEP, an initiative introduced to bridge the growing tech gap in the ecosystem and avail participants with a competitive advantage in the global workforce. This can also be attributed to the fact that as Stanbic IBTC, we acknowledge the significance of technology in education and the importance of investing and harnessing the potential possibilities. As a forward-thinking financial institution, this conference poses a great opportunity for us to drive and showcase our position as a financial provider that leans towards delivering innovative initiatives that support the fusion and advancement of EduTech. It is clear that technology is playing a significant role in education. Therefore, we will continue to engage in conversations that contribute to the growth of education in Nigeria by creating diverse opportunities like products, services, initiatives that support access to quality education. I hope this conference will further promote and broaden our understanding of the significance, the impact, implication, and direction of technology on our educational system, as well as guide us, as well as give us a clear insight on how to collaborate with organizations to facilitate bridging the tech gap in education and drive national growth. Conclusively, suffice is to say that there is need to embrace technology more in our schools than that the future of education is tech and the future is here. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak at today's conference. Thank you, everyone. Hello. Hello.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bashir. We really do appreciate your keynote address. I think now I would like to hand over to Chinyere. Chinyere.
You use 909. Gege.
Set I want.
Stanbic IBTC.
Set I want.
909.
I want.
Artist Wallet. Gege. Stanbic IBTC. Gang. 909. Gang. Whoa, it can be. Gang. When you use 909. Gege. Send money via 909. Gang. Buy airtime via 909. Gang. Sub data via 909. Gang. Pay bills via 909. Gang. That's the 909 ash. Gang. Money miss fraud and no cash. Gang. How you go do birthday bash. That's the 909 ash. 909 is the gang code. Dial am now with all phones. Run that deal with the swift flow. Make you bust my brain with the whole show. Just try am now if you don't know. No darling for the gang code. Stanbic IBTC finish work code. Use artist wallet if you want code. Set I want gang. 909 gang. Pay bills gang. Account opening gang. Set I want loan approved gang. Send me your account number gang. Credit alert gang. Gang. Star 909 ash is your new code. One before ash if you want code. Sake of the super app, no app. You've got code but you're not gang. In fact, we are all gang. Gang with the use sharp code. Gang with the move. Gang with the same moolah. Gang with sword be last. This gang is your short code. Dial star 909 hash to join the gang today.
That was a short video from our gold sponsor, Stanbic IBTC. Thank you very much. Welcome once again, everyone, to the conference. And to take us further into the conference, we'll proceed with our first panel section. So we would like to invite our first speaker, the VP Marketing and Distribution, ULesson, Mr. Tayo Shole, the Program Director, Digital Schoolhouse, Mr. Chanel Said, the Chief Executive Officer, JSK Consulting Group, Mrs. Janet Adetu, and as our moderator, I also like to invite the Executive Director, JA Nigeria, Ms. Folusho Badamosin. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this panel. Thank you so much, EduFirst and Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce for having us. Okay, so the topic of this panel is education beyond walls. And I have a wonderful set of panelists here today with me to discuss this extremely important topic. The topic is all about a focus on continuity of education outside of the school environment, the importance of parental engagement, and the government's role in this regard. Our distinguished panelists are Tayo Shole, the VP Marketing and Distribution of ULesson, Shanilia Said, the Head of Education and Program Director of Digital Schoolhouse, and Mrs. Janet Adetu, who's the CEO of JSK Consulting Group. Can we give them some virtual claps? Welcome to our distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for being here with us. Can we see some virtual claps in the chat box? All right, so let's jump right into it because we only have about 30 minutes. So I'm going to start with you, Tayo. Sorry for putting you on the hot seat, the distinguished gentleman amongst us, but we're starting with you. So my very first question for you, Tayo, is this. What are some of the ways that you think that we can promote digital student learning, considering all of the obstacles that we have in our environment here in Nigeria? Tayo,
right, thanks, Felicia.
Okay, great.
So I think that one of the first things that we need to do, right, so I think that one of the first things we need to do is bring together all of the stakeholders and agree on what the outcomes that we want are. I would think that the outcomes that we care about, the outcome that we care about is improvement in the quality of education that is available, rather than just school attendance. And there's some obstacles to achieving that right now. And you have to sort of break them down into their components. So if you wanted to sort of digitize the entire education system right now, you have to think of the curriculum, you have to think of the content delivery, but you also have to think of access to devices of the learners. You have to think of access to internet, right? But I think that if you targeted this messaging at parents and teachers and school heads and school owners, such that we can come to agree that technology is getting better and things are getting better. Things are just about every industry has been impacted by technology more than maybe in the last 10 years, just over this period of the new normal. And if we then said, so what's the challenge with devices and who is, going to help us solve those problems? Are we going to sort of find a way to give the OEMs tax breaks, when they sell at a certain price point to learners or to education institutions? How are we going to help the telco with pricing? Because internet costs, even though they're dropping really quickly, one of the unique obstacles in Nigeria is also that the cost of living is rising rapidly, and we need to solve that. In terms of quality of the content, I think that there are a bunch of education institutions in Nigeria that have, across the continent really, that have taken that on. Of course, ULesson is one of them, and that can only get better. It then comes to the point of, even in government institutions, are we going to adopt that? Is government going to think of improving education beyond just building more classroom blocks and actually adopting, new technology and delivering learning to these kids? Once we solve that, I think that the problem is, pretty much on the way to getting solved.
Thank you so much, Tayo, for that list of things that we need to solve. I've noted them, and there are quite a few, and we'll kind of get more into that as we go along. Can you tell us a bit about what you do at ULesson? So, what does ULesson provide, for students, for parents, for schools? Can you give us a bit more insight on that?
Sure. So ULesson, so our mission at ULesson is to deliver quality education, of course, via digital channels, but in a way that is accessible and affordable. So right now we're focused on the K-12 section. So that would be your primary school up until senior secondary school. We are heavily focused on STEM. Right now, if you were in senior secondary school, you'll be able to learn maths, English, chemistry, physics, biology. In junior secondary, maths, English, business, science, and tech. And in primary school, basic maths, English, and basic science and tech as well. And we delivered this across 3 or 4 product pillars. You would be able to, when you download the app, and you can check it out, it's on iOS and Android and also on web, ulesson.com essentially. When you download the app, you will be able to learn using a bank of pre-recorded videos in all of these subjects. And what that does, the advantage of that is that, a learner can go in, watch a video in photosynthesis that has been created, using some of the best tutors, following sort of like the most complete curricula across the country, but also enriched with high quality animations and illustrations. What that means is that, so if I were teaching a kid biology and I was talking about photosynthesis, and I'm saying, oh, the sun shines on the green leaves, and because there's chlorophyll in there, the child has to imagine that. But with ULesson, what he will see is, as he's watching that, as there's audio coming, is also seeing video, right, of how this thing is actually happening, right, and is now matching what he has imagined to what is actually happening. And as you know, young people are more visual learners than just audio, and everybody generally, remember what you see, just adding all of the senses together and learning with them at the same time. In addition to that, we now have live lessons, essentially cohort-based, where a group of learners can join a class, a master class in quadratic equation happening at 5:30 p.m., where a tutor is actually taking them through these concepts and breaking it down to them. They're able to ask questions right then and there. And even after the live class, the next pillar is that they're able to ask questions. At the push of a button within the app, you can ask a question, and a tutor will then pick it up and help this child in a one-to-one setting. And this is either via voice notes. You can take a picture of the problem, or you can just chat and text with the tutor and get real-time responses. The advantage of this is that learners learn at different paces. if a teacher were in front of a class, and those of us who used to sit at the back of classes can maybe relate to this. When tutor says, "Oh, does everyone understand?" We'd all say yes. But the truth is, some kids already get it, while some of us need more help. There's a chance that, you know, I don't get that help and I need something supplementary. So we have worked with schools. I mean, we continue to work with some of the most proactive schools across the country to deliver this. So that's essentially what we do. Looks like Felicia dropped off. So while we wait for her, I'd say, so in addition to the basic math, English, chemistry that we offer, and this is because, you know, science and technology really is the future. We have a coding element to our product. You know, parents and learners who want to go into technology, you know, and start early, have the option to sign up to our coding classes as well. It's called devkids.com, and in a one-to-one setting as well, you know, live video, a young person can begin to learn the basics of technology using Scratch, Blockly, Python, and HTML. And this is not just so that they can become software engineers in the future. There are, you know, a multitude of career paths in technology beyond just coding, but the basic knowledge of being able to, you know, solve problems, you know, just logical thinking, and the math angle to it as well, you know, makes it a very good product that has seen, you know, great traction across the continent, really, not just in Nigeria. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I believe while we're waiting for Felicia to join us back, we'll just go straight to Shamela. I hope you can hear me, because it looks as if she's frozen.
Hi.
Okay, you can. Okay, great. Okay, so I think we'll just take you on the question regarding the importance of parental engagement to child development and learning. I'd really like to get your take on that, and also taking a cue from what Tayo just mentioned. Would like to hear you speak more on that.
Of course. You cut out for a bit there, so I didn't, when you said taking a cue from, I didn't.
So like
that's
a follow-up
to
what Tayo had mentioned. Child development and all. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think the parental engagement and the importance of it can't be underestimated, to be honest. Children, you know, if teachers are very influential on children's choices, then as our parents, that's where we get our guidance, our aspirations from. You know, there is the initial expectation for us is set out for us by our parents, whether that is an aspiration to you need to become a doctor or a lawyer or something along those lines, or whether that's you know, some parents are coming from backgrounds and living in environments where the expectation is much lower, and they're saying, actually, look, we just need to survive. I need you to go out and earn some money. We don't, high career aspirations are possibly not realistic. Whichever scale, at whichever end of the scale parents are at, their opinions are very influential upon children. And so I think when we are talking, you know, for me, when we're talking about engaging students with digital learning, and when we're talking about sort of using technology to really bridge that gap and bridge that divide, a lot of that discussion that we are having has also got to incorporate parents to make sure that they are also on board with what is happening, what the career opportunities are, because, you know, it has got to be inclusive. You know, this is, but, you know, some of the work that we do, what we do at Yuki and at Digital Schoolhouse is, you know, I want us to be able to create high quality engaging and inspirational experiences that promote digital learning, but I want them to be equally accessible to all students, regardless of who they are and where they're sitting and what they're doing. You know, everybody should be able to participate. And you know, and it's important to be able to sort of really break that mold and to reach those students. And there's lots of different ways that we can do that with parents. You know, schools will run information evenings. They will do, you know, if you're thinking at school-age children, there is, you know, whether it's teacher-parent communications, but for a parent, what a school says is very important in terms of that is where you assign value, right? So as a parent, think about it. You know, if your teacher is saying your child has these strengths and these weaknesses, and these are the tools that you can use to really elevate your child, there is a lot more value in that coming from the teacher than it is via some other third party that doesn't know your child. So using schools as a medium by which to engage parents means that actually parents are hearing this information through tried and trusted resources. Teachers are people of trust. Schools are places of trust. I have great trust in what my school says, my daughter's school says about my children's ability, and for them to provide opportunities for my child. You know, the school is that first place that's going to happen. So schools and parents have really got to work in partnership, because learning doesn't end at the end of the school day. It carries on at home. And there's got to be this, you know, one of the things that I've always believed, learning has got to be fun. If we're going to engage children, if children don't enjoy something, they will drop it the first chance they get. The moment I passed my GCSE exams at school in mathematics, I dropped it. I never went back to it, not at college, not at university, because I hated the subject. I wasn't very good at it, and it didn't inspire me and it didn't encourage me. I couldn't see the relevance of using trigonometry in my future career. And so for me, mathematics had no place in my future world. And of course, that's wrong. And I've gone back to mathematics over the years. But like, you know, computing and technology is like that too. And education is like that. Children will become disconnected from education if they don't see its relevance to their everyday lives, and if they don't enjoy it primarily. And when we're talking about parents, you know, that relevance to their everyday lives, parents have a role to play in that. And enjoyment is a role to play, because if I'm a child and I'm enjoying something, then I will want to carry on doing that at home. And quite often, you know, things like that are gameplay, you know, and not just digital gameplay, but playing in the classroom, whether or playing in the playground, whether that's hopscotch or hide and seek or whatever other games. You know, we children play for fun. And actually, quite often we have to stop children from playing, because we say, look, now is the time to learn and now is the time to study. But I think that's where we're missing a trick, because actually if we tap into that world of play where they are having fun and doing it naturally and teach through that, then I think we can come, you know, children can come a long way, you know, and that's where parents can really support playing with their child, communicating with their child, and then teaching them. Now, whether that's you're learning about the alphabet or colors or, you know, or scientific principles, it's not that hard. So in Digital Schoolhouse, we've developed resources that don't require parents to necessarily have spent hours learning how to program before they engage in it with their children. It's an activity that is fun, that you're playing a game and the parent and the child are essentially learning at the same time. They're both learning programming and they're both having that discussion, but because the adult is an adult, they'll be able to frame discussions and questions to help really expand what the child can, you know, what the child is taking in. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Shanelia, and huge apologies. All of my internet devices decided to fail at once. Just the way technology likes to, you know, do its thing at the worst times. Thank you so much for that response. Learning fun. We really need to make learning fun. That's what I got from you. And, you know, that's between the teachers and also the parents, and it's not something that we should leave to just the school to learn. Thank you so much for that. Just a reminder that if you have any questions, you can pop them in the Q&A box so that we can take your questions towards the end. Okay, so my next question is for Mrs. Adetu, and this is all kind of just linking to what we're talking about, education beyond the school walls, right? What role do you think that internships play in providing soft skills required in the workplace? So the importance of internship and how that applies to the success of the students.
Yes, thank you so much, Felicia. Okay, I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Internships as it relates to out of school engagement. First and foremost, what exactly is that internship? We hear the word all the time, but some people mix it up with apprenticeship. Okay, but the thing is, for internships itself is what I would call first-hand knowledge of working in an organization. It is what I call the real world of the workforce. And what does it entail? Organizations themselves, companies, corporates, and so they come together or they come up with an idea and they organize what we call an opportunity for a young individual to be taught in-depth knowledge of the business. And indeed, it could be short-lived, it's just a few months. There is an opportunity to be retained later when you come back and you want work, if indeed you've done well. It can be paid for, or it might not be paid for. It could be part-time, it could even be full-time. Typically, it's for undergraduates or graduates themselves, and it cuts across all disciplines, okay? And for me, it's like experience on the job. It's a training period. It's a time where you acquire new skills, okay? And what skills are we really talking about? Technical skills, leadership skills, professional skills. But again, I would say for me, it's a great way to begin a chosen career. It's a great way for you to learn fast, professionally, of course. It's an easy way to know the modality, the challenge, and the best part of a chosen profession. I remember actually helping one of my friend's daughters, actually very recently, get an internship because she's in between a program. The program requires her to do at least a few months of job experience so that she can get an idea of this particular profession and this career that she has chosen, to know whether she's even gonna, what she needs to put into it to really get the best out of it. And for me, it's like closing a skill gap that is not taught in the school environment, okay? And these are really interpersonal skills, leadership skills. Now, you said, what exactly is the role of that internship when it is regarded to interpersonal soft skills, like you mentioned? It's an on-the-job experience. It can involve mentoring. It can involve coaching. It can involve digital skills, all right? And even more education, even beyond what you will learn in the school. For me, the skills that you will get when you do a kind of internship program, which again is an out-of-school program, beyond the school walls, a lot of things you learn that you wouldn't typically learn at school. First and foremost, I would call them leadership skills. That's the biggest thing anyone who's going in for an internship program will get out of their short time with that organization. And it starts with, for instance, attitude. All right. How do they start with learning how to behave when it's not a school environment? It's a working environment. You have multi-generational people that you're working with, people that are as old as your parents are there, people that are, your peers are there, people that probably might even be younger than you are also there. So you're going to learn how to conduct yourself with attitude. It's a behavioral thing. And when we talk about attitude and behavior, it's really about how to relate to your colleagues, whatever their age may be. How do you relate to your colleagues as it regards, getting the work done, being in a team environment, and making sure that the common goal of that organization is met, speaking one language. So you've got to learn new behavioral traits. You've got to drop whatever you learned in school, or whatever you picked up in school, or whatever you have a habit with, and learn the nitty-gritties of being in a work environment. Another skill set that can be taught through internship is, of course, communication. You can't go wrong with communication. This is like, and it's in three facets: nonverbal, verbal and virtual. So non-verbal, a lot of people take for granted saying so much without saying a single word. That's body language. What exactly is your body language saying when you're in a work environment? Your boss gives you something to do. What exactly are you, what message are you giving with your non-verbal, approach to given assignments? Is your attitude positive? Is your attitude negative? All right, you will learn these things in an internship program. Okay, so again, with nonverbal, it's about the business environment, how do you behave? It's about the social environment, how you behave. Again, with verbal communication as well, what language is acceptable in a work environment? You can't go into a work environment and start speaking slangs. You can't go into a work environment and start doing, even when you're doing your written communication, we can't have half-baked language. So you will learn how to communicate in a business manner, in a business way. Why? Because you're representing your organization, and of course you're representing your own brand as well. Now that COVID has come and the outburst of virtual, we are doing this virtually now, they must learn also how to communicate in a virtual space. All right, and it's definitely not the same. Your visual presence, how you speak virtually, how you present yourself virtually, it's about presence. Okay, so you will learn all these things through an internship program, because it's about how do I conduct myself in the workplace. There are lots of other soft skills as well. For example, character education. All right, character education through internship will tell you, character is it's actually who you are. All right, we know who you are through your character. Now, this can be modified, this can be learned, this can be corrected. It's a space where you learn new things, unlearn old things, and relearn those things that you probably would have forgotten. All right, because of character education, it's about, modifying how you should behave as you grow through the ranks of an organization. Again, too, I look at it as a space whereby if you have some old traits, some bad habits, through internships, you'll be condoned. There are policies that an organization has that actually reprimand bad character, bad behavior. And what am I saying here? If you're constantly late, you have to modify how you come to work, get up early on time, be at work on time. Lateness is not condoned. Chewing gum in the office is not condoned. Many things that, depict your character will also be addressed through that. But quickly, as I run through, what about image and reputation? How you appear? A lot of young kids dress up anyhow, expression. They want to express themselves, and they don't see anything wrong with some of the things that they wear to an organization, to an office. Imagine you're training to be a lawyer, and you need to do an internship as a lawyer. And law is very strict in terms of your appearance, okay? You can't go into a law firm wearing yellow, orange, and pink. You have to get used to wearing black and white and represent that career space, all right? You need to know what to wear and what not to wear in an organization, especially as it regards that particular organization and their dress code policy and things like that. You will learn these things. You can't wear this to the office. I remember when my daughter was going to do some internship actually in her father's company, and she had so many issues with what to wear. And I was saying, you definitely can't wear that. You can't wear that. And for them, for her, actually, it was a completely new learning experience, what to wear and what not to wear when she goes for these things. And of course, confidence is also brought out through internship. If you have a very low self-esteem or you're introverted, when you get to the office space, you begin to, relate to people better. You have a body, you have a boss, you're superior. People will take you through the ropes, and you begin to build your self-esteem and build your confidence. And these are things that you will learn. And of course, finally, I would say networking is another skill you will learn when you get to the job environment. And I'm saying this because it's very important. You can't stay in one corner and put your head down and be busy doing nothing. What is very important about a workspace that you will learn is how to interrelate and build relationships. So you may be into marketing, you may be into maybe your career space is marketing. You've got to get used to knowing how to build relationships, create acquaintances, have a relationship with your customers, with your clients. And these are the experiences that really you can't be taught while you're in the school environment. They are beyond the school walls. They're out of the school engagements that indeed, once you get into it, and that's why these kind of things are very good. Internships are really good. You learn a whole lot. And you find that when a young graduate, an undergraduate, or a young student goes into internship programs, honestly, they will come out with a whole wealth of new experiences, and they begin to tell you, and that is the beginning of their workforce life. And that is a testimony to them. It's a new beginning for them, so that when they do finally enter the workforce, some of those experiences through internship will come to bear. They'll, and they will be able to manage the work environment even better. And by the way, when they go back to school, you find that they're more disciplined and more mature as they grow through their careers and life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adetu. You touched on so many important things, including the generational differences in the workforce and all that prevails. And I'm sure that MBCC is taking notes. That should probably be a topic on your next conference, because we have a real generational difference that shows, in dressing and so many other things that Mrs. Adetu touched on. Thank you so much. Tayo, there is a question directly for you, and I know that you have seen it, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'm just going to have you take the question. You can read out the question and also the answer. So over to you, Tayo.
Thanks, Felicia. So this question is from Timothy Adekunjo. Says he has viewed lesson, but he hasn't been using it. He has started to see our ads across all channels. He wants to know if it's a free or paid platform, if it's a premium or free platform. Timothy, and this is also to all of the teachers and parents here as well. So ULesson is, so our model is freemium. There's a free element and there's a paid element. Think of it as a trial version, right? So you download the app, you register, you're not sure what it is, you've never seen it before. We let you go through the product. A certain percentage of it is free. I think that 5 free video lessons every day, for the first few weeks that you download the app. And this is to give you the confidence that, this actually solves a problem for me. And as a teacher, confidence to sort of introduce it to parents and learners and say, this is something that can help you, that can help this child become better at where they struggle. And this goes to Shanila's point earlier about the role that teachers and parents, have to play in these improvements that we talk about. You see something that clearly works for your learners, and you want to recommend it. You want to recommend a textbook. You want to recommend a study guide or a study partner. And ULesson is that. Timothy, I hope I've been able to answer your question. So essentially, when you download the app, it's free, to a certain extent, and then you have to pay to unlock the entire value.
Thank you so much, Tayo. All right, there is another question that has come up. It's quite a general question, but I'm going to let as many of you panelists as want to take it, because we only have about 2 minutes left. So it's going to be our last question. So the question is coming from Ike, and Ike wants to know the role that technology plays in educating African youths. And I know this is quite, a big question. I know Shanilia definitely has some thoughts. I know Tayo has some thoughts, and I'm pretty sure that Mrs. Adesu also has some thoughts. So I'm going to let you all take it, and then we'll round off from there. So Tayo, you can start since you are on the screen and you're smiling. You can start.
Okay, so it's a pretty, so the answer is a lot, but let me just try to streamline. There's not enough quality people, right, to go around. So if you think about just average class sizes, we do not have enough teachers to go around. We don't have enough teaching aids. We don't have enough schools. We don't have enough of anything to go around. Africa is essentially the youngest continent. When you look 20, 30 years, most of the people in the world would look like us. Technology has the ability to sort of take the little that we have and amplify it and help us distribute it to all corners of the continent, from Cape Town to Cairo. You can take someone in Lagos, teaching physics or math, and take that same lesson, that same class at the same time, to someone in Rabat, and they're learning at the same time, at the same pace. It has the potential to be a leveler. That means that the people with access to the most means. Do not, sort of just take it all. It means that the guy in Agege or Ajegunle, has the same access to quality education as the person anywhere else in the world. That's the power that technology has for us.
Thank you so much, Tayo. Mrs. Adetu, over to you. Any thoughts on the question?
Yes, of course, technology is very, very important. Without a doubt, it really definitely facilitates learning, facilitates the acquisition of new knowledge. It creates what I would say a creative mindset. And then it's there for transformation, for change, so that we can be at par with international standards when it comes to, when we're looking for job and we're looking for IQ, we're looking for all the kinds of intelligence. And for me, it's a future forward development. You can't do without it. Technology is here to stay. And if you want to boost yourself, build yourself and grow, you do need technology today. And so for me, it's for transformation, it's for change, and it's for future forward development.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adetu. Shanilia, over to you.
Yeah, if we think about where our children are going to be in 10 or 15 years' time, as they're going to be solving problems that don't yet exist, using tools that haven't been invented yet. We are living in a technological world that is not going away. Technology permeates, as we said, every aspect of our lives, and that will only continue to happen. So if they are going to effectively solve tomorrow's problems using tools, then they have to have an understanding of technology. They have to understand this world that they are living in, because they're certainly using this mechanism outside of the classroom. And so it only makes sense for us to incorporate that inside the classroom and to help them really navigate that world and understand it, to use it not just safely, but to use it responsibly and to use it effectively, so that they can almost create the challenges to help drive that future forward. And I think this is a global need. This is not just limited to the youth in Africa. I think this is actually a global challenge. This is, something that we are going to have to get to grips with, because it is a fundamental shift in the way we have historically viewed educational practice, and that's a pretty major undertaking. What I think needs is that. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so we have another question here. Coming from Mrs. Ibisaga Eunice, and she's asking if there's any way your team can partner with state or federal colleges with new innovative technology. Tayo, I think that this question is directed at you. Is there any way that your team at ULesson, or are you looking into any sort of partnerships with the state or federal government colleges? Oh, I think we just lost Tayo. I think that technology is doing its thing with us today. Okay, no worries. We'll jump into the next question while we wait for Tayo to come back. Mrs. Adetu, somebody has a question for you. She would like to know how to build confidence in the workplace. Very direct question. She said she wants you to answer it. Yeah.
Well, confidence doesn't happen in a spur of a moment or in a day. Confidence is built over time. And there are many things. You need to identify where you lack the confidence. Is it in public speaking? Is it in the way you look? Is it in your appearance? Is it in relating to people? Once you're able to identify the areas or your gaps, then we begin to build on it slowly and steadily. It's always advisable to have a buddy, have somebody in the office who, is really who you're close to, who you're learning from. Or again, if you are a superior, you need to be keeping a close eye on your subordinates. Those that are very quiet, you need to come to their aid, you need to assist them, you need to help them grow. You always be there. When you're giving them assignments, you always have to follow up on them. Many a times you have staff working with you that are very quiet, very introverted. You can't ignore that. You have to get them involved. When you have team meetings, group meetings, get them to speak, let them be leaders as well. let them lead the team. You have, sometimes it's a little bit of a push. They are aware of it, but they don't know how to come out of it. And it's a slow and steady pace over time. And you'd be surprised how when you give them opportunities to speak, it might be difficult initially, but when you give them opportunities to continue to speak, be the leader, it begins to grow on them and they begin to work on their own confidence. And this again is slow and steady. You need to identify where the confidence lack is. By the way, everybody has a confidence issue at some point. I can speak in front of 500 people, but tell me to speak in front of 50,000 people. Of course, there's an issue that my butterflies might come, but then you work on it. Sometimes there are breathing exercises. There are certain things that we go through. I do teach this when I do out of school summer camps for kids. And this is one major area that a lot of kids also have issues with. And again, in the workforce, it's a major issue. But then over time, a coach can help, a mentor can help, and that's well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adetu. So just to all the panelists, if you don't mind popping your contact information in the chat box, because some people are asking if there's a way that they can contact you directly. Tayo has already popped his, so if our other panelists don't mind, that would be very helpful. Tayo, you're back. Welcome back. So the question was about partnerships with the federal government colleges. Are you and your team working on any sort of partnerships, with government, whether it's on the federal, states, or the state levels?
Right, thanks. So we are always open to partnerships. And to be honest, we have initiated a number of those partnerships as well. But the truth is that, government moves not as quickly as a startup would. So one of the ways that we've tried to speed things up is to speak to the schools directly. But I think that more than government partnerships between us and parents and teachers are more productive. And I say that to mean if your child is in SS2 and preparing to write WAEC in a year, and it would take ULSN and the federal government 9 months to come to an agreement, you don't want to wait, right? You want to get your child learning as quickly as possible. More so because the cost of it is not prohibitive to you. But that said, there are a bunch of government schools that we're talking to. We're talking to like Parent Teachers Association or Students Association. Some schools, are more proactive than others. Some schools, see the need and move quickly. If there's anyone here, who is able to help us move things forward pretty quickly, I'm happy to leave phone numbers in the chat that you can reach out to us on. But yes, we have a team that is actually dedicated to doing that. So it's something that we want to do.
Excellent, thank you. So if we have any enablers in the house, please reach out. Very interested in that. Okay, so the next question actually has to do with the African continental question, but the question says, how do you think that the African tech companies' revenue and continental reach? Is that a question? Okay, in the event that nobody's comfortable taking that.
No, I can take that. Can you hear me?
Apologies, I got kicked off again. Did you get my question before I got kicked off?
Can you say the question?
Can you all hear me? Yes.
I can hear you. Can you say the last question again?
Yes. Okay, so how do you think the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will affect and help to boost EdTech companies' revenue and continental reach? Did you get the question?
Yeah, I can take that. For everyone that's involved in EdTech, so let me speak from the ULSN perspective. The goal today is not revenue, right? So reach, yes, important to us. But the mission is to solve the problem around education. We believe that, once we're able to do that, the opportunities are endless. You don't think of revenue and all of those types of things before the problem, starts getting solved. ULesson is present right now in all of Anglophone West Africa. We recently launched in East Africa, to what I can say is very great reception. South Africa as well, we're starting to see amazing traction and there. So it's more of the reach than the revenue. I think that it has a potential to help. We may not have explored it to the fullest, but it's something that companies have to solve. But I don't know that there's any tech company that today that's thinking, revenues first. And I think that's the right way to go.
Thank you so much, Tayo. Okay, so we have another set of questions that I think perhaps we can combine into one. So someone is asking how one can work on their communication skills and how to apply it. And I have a sense that that's for Mrs. Adetu. So this is how they can work on their communication skills. But in addition to that, someone has a question about work and training, right? So they said, what do you do when you work and train heads of different departments and you feel like they are taking undue advantage of you, right? So these are people that you're working with, trying to bridge the gap in education, but you feel like, they just come to you at the last minute and they're taking advantage of you. And I can see you smiling, Mrs. Adetu. So over to you for those questions.
Well, thank you. I'm curious to know what's taking advantage of you, the trainer, means. I'm very curious to know that. Because if your job is to find out where there's a skill gap and you feel that communication is important and you have presented that and they go for training, then you've done a good job. The important thing also, however, is it's not just to do the training, it's also how to apply that training. So, when you're training someone, you really want to teach them something that when they go back to work on Monday, they can apply it to their workplace or to their job, as the case may be. And so I'm not too sure the nature of the training that you're giving them and why or how they're taking due advantage. That I'd love to know. But then again, when it comes to communication skills, how do you learn communication skills? Like I mentioned, communication is this wide, and communication involves a whole lot of things. It does involve the verbal communication, how you speak, how you talk, what is your language, what's coming out, what is the message that you're giving when you speak to a colleague, a subordinate, a superior, even in the business world, as it regards also to the social world. How do you speak? What vocabulary is coming out of your mouth? There are some things that I tell people, if this is in your vocabulary, drop it like a hot potato, because this is unbecoming of the professional that you're trying to be. Again, to nonverbal language is even more powerful. It says so much without saying a single word. When you tell somebody like this to keep quiet, that instantly tells you don't even have to say anything. So communication skills as regards to where you work it varies, even down to virtual as well, virtual skills in terms of communication. What are you saying? How are you saying it? Video conferencing, what are you saying? How are you saying it? What is the language? What is the message, that you are communicating? And this is really quite predominant with leaders and subordinates. So many a times you, the leader, is trying to deliver or disseminate a message to your subordinates, and you're not getting across very well. People understand communication or words or statements in different ways. What are you saying? How are you saying it? I can tell you there's so many statements that you make. How you say it is what makes the difference. Okay, so it's how you say it. What are you saying? And again, to emotional intelligence comes to play here when you're communicating. Are you saying it such that it lands on the person well? Why you have somebody in your office that is poorly dressed, and you say, don't come to the office like this tomorrow. And if you come like this the office tomorrow, you'll be sent home. But guess what? The real communication should be the reason why. Tell them the why behind what you have just said. Why should they not come to work wearing things like that? Why should it be that they should dress up properly? What exactly is the policy of the organization? What reputation are they trying to present? So building communication skills always has a why behind it. You must know why you're saying this. The why all the time. That is how people will learn. That is how people will grasp. That is how people will understand when it comes to communication. So communication is large and faceted. It needs to be broken down, and don't forget written communication. And not to mention when they're on the telephone, oh my goodness, telephone communication is another thing entirely. So we have a large set. We break communication skills learning into different facets, all right? And so you pick them up one by one. It could be a whole thing in an organization, advanced communication skills. What is important so that everybody is team aligned, goal aligned with their personal goals, with the corporate goals as well. And that way, that's when communication has maximum effects and becomes efficient. It's all about influence. Communication is where you bring out your own level of influence. If you're teaching, if you're communicating, and if you're learning as well. And so for that reason, to learn communication skills is to identify where you have problems first and work on them, or where your team has problems. There could be communication team problems within the team. Identify the major area and work on it as you go along.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adetu, for that. Okay, Shanilia, the next question is for you. The question is, how do you intend to use EduTech to ensure all-inclusive education? So talking about more inclusive education using EdTech.
I think there's different levels. There's different levels to this. In terms of EdTech and accessibility into schools and environments, and the resources and materials available, and then the actual hardware to run them on. And there's variation within that. So in terms of what is available out there, and do you have any machines at all to run them? And then if you have the machines to run them, are they at a high enough specification to do so? Because sometimes the material that comes out from EdTech can be sort of quite high spec and then quite costly. In terms of sort of what we do in our work at Digital Schoolhouse, we look for, there's lots of open source materials available. There are lots of things that have free access or free limited access, and these are really good resources. So what we do is we point to things that quite often are not chargeable and that schools can use. And actually, when it comes to teaching computing, there's a lot in computing that you can actually teach without using any hardware at all. We call it unplugged computing. So I can teach you programming and game design using a card game or a magic trick, or we can do some dancing, and I can teach you the same thing through dance. But inevitably, if you are learning, it's about learning technology and learning to understand it, then you are going to have to engage with the device. Likewise, this is about other subject teachers and other classrooms to do it. And sometimes I think when we look at EdTech, we think we have to spend a fortune. But the thing is, in schools, it is about making a reasoned judgment. How are you operating in your school environment? What do you need? And what is your budget? And then use to evaluate. I'll give you an example. Some schools, for example, that had a bit of a windfall and thought, right, everybody's using tablets, we should be using tablets, and went out and spent a fortune on iPads. And then the most advanced thing they were doing for iPads is doing some research on the internet and maybe a couple of ebooks and stuff like that. It's a complete waste of money, because if that's all you want to do, you can find much cheaper devices to do it on. So it's about, in terms of schools, there is part of this is almost, dare I say, education for the schools, in terms of knowing what's out there, knowing what you want to achieve, and then spending your budget accordingly and wisely, and making those informed decisions and informed judgments. some of this is there then for the industry and the EduTech providers in being aware of the capabilities of schools, but actually also thinking about pedagogy. Sometimes I've seen tools and functions that are available that look quite glitzy. They look like every teacher should have them. They're quite interesting. So to give you an example, VR and VR classroom sets, they're quite pricey. They're the type of things that affluent schools think that they've probably got to have in order to stand out head and shoulders above the rest. But what sometimes these people have not done is actually think about the pedagogy, how that tool is used within the classroom. And actually you might spend thousands on a classroom VR set, and actually what you're watching are glorified YouTube videos, which are completely free. So the beauty and the dynamics is in how the teacher uses it. So there's elements for everybody. There's sensible spending from school. There's, EdTech companies themselves, I think, need to think about classroom practice and pedagogy as they're designing their resources. And I know lots do. This is not slating anybody, but I've seen some examples where they do not. But I think there's a third proposition in terms of teacher training, and there's that hesitancy sometimes from the teachers. And over in the UK, for example, I've had a long history of kind of sort of teaching teachers and teaching non-computing teachers. So your history teacher, your art teacher, and trying to get them to use technology to enhance the subject of their teaching. And some people would drag their feet and say, you know what, I've been teaching art for 20 years without a single computer. I can carry on another 20 and I'm delivering very good lessons. Thank you very much. So how do you prove to them that there is use in technology that we can enhance that subject teaching? And there's a conversation to be had there. And the people that hesitate to use these mechanics are often ones that haven't had the chance to see that potential for themselves. So for example, tools like Assassin's Creed Discovery Tour, they have a fully interactive website with all sorts of materials that people can use. It's a very immersive way of teaching history. Rather than standing up and pointing at a book or showing some images, you can actually get kids walking around ancient Greece or ancient Egypt and wandering the pyramids and having a look for themselves. And that is completely different. It's mind-blowing for the children. So there are these things out there. The thing I touched upon at the beginning is the access to devices, and that usability of devices. And again, one of the things that we have started working on in the UK is that we have a campaign going called Devices for All. And industry has a cycle of upgrading your machines every 3 years. Your machines that you use to run your tech company, you're pretty much changing them on average every 3 years. And then companies will pay a recycling company to take this machine away. And my request is very simple. I'm like, rather than pay a recycling company to take your old computer away, why not just donate that computer to a local school? And what you find is that these machines that are being donated are at a far higher specification than the newest machines that school currently has. Because schools have two things: either your machines, and I'm going to base this off UK schools, but quite a lot of schools, you will find that your average life cycle for a computer or a device is anywhere between 5 to 7 years and counting. And even then, the 7-year-old machine doesn't get dumped. Quite often it gets moved to something like the business studies department, and all they need to do is word processing. It doesn't matter that it takes you 20 minutes to log on and load your desktop. If all you need to do is write an essay, there's a machine here that you can use. So they just get moved around. And the other thing is when they were purchased in the beginning, they weren't high-end machines to begin with. They were probably quite low spec. They certainly don't have graphics cards. And so they're not going to run some of this newfangled equipment and things like that. And yes, we can argue for governments, and yes, government should be giving schools more funding so schools are not in this position. And yes, there should be that, smarter decision making by teachers when they're making that, or by the head teachers actually and principals when they're making those decisions. But those are long-term issues that are going to take a while to resolve. What we can do in the short term is make a request to industry: don't recycle your machine, donate it to a school instead. They will thank you. You will have hundreds, if not thousands, of children over a period of number of years, and you have unlocked for them a huge wealth of learning opportunities.
Thank you so much, Shanelia. Thank you very much for that. Someone asked a question about the name of the interactive platform that you use. That could you kindly mention that again? The name of the interactive platform that you use.
Myself. So I was talking about Assassin's Creed Discovery Tour. It's Assassin's Creed is a game series, and Discovery Tour is the educational version of those games. And they have a website. And so, for example, if you don't, if you're not going to download that kind of full experience, or if you're not going to use that full experience or purchase that, then they have lesson plans, and they've extracted quests and tours and challenges in YouTube videos that you can then use instead. So there's lots of ways to be able to use that resource, but it's definitely very, very exciting to do.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Tayo, the next question is for you. Reach the poorly developed areas in Nigeria. Tayo, did you get the question?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So thanks, Amos. If there's any way to improve the quality of education in the poorly developed areas in Nigeria, then using technology is definitely the way. But we have to think about what the obstacles are. What are the things that we need to solve for that, even that to happen. And Shanela mentioned, access to devices is one thing, access to internet another. But one of the challenges that we have also seen is just the openness of the stakeholders. Sometimes and sometimes the school teachers. Sometimes it's schools and teachers, sometimes it's parents, just not being able to make that mental shift, from the status quo, which is, have a teacher in there by textbooks. And so in these places that, you mentioned, when I just think of them, even the physical environment isn't great. One of the things that we've done in some places is to build learning centers. So this is a physical space where we have tablets. And to your point again, Shanila, I keep coming back to stuff that you've said. Some of the things that you need, especially to run a product like ULesson, isn't especially high-end. A 2 gig device, a 2 gig Android device, that's connected to the internet, and you're watching videos and taking, live classes and quizzes and tests. So our learning centers are essentially set up, 40, 50 tablets, internet, power, security, and kids can walk in there anytime of the day and learn. But this is, for a private entity, doing this alone is first of all a risk, but also not very scalable. With outside of Nigeria, we've had a number of organizations, the UK, for instance, in Uganda, working with them to build out learning centers, co-funded by some other Ministry of Education in Uganda as well. That's not done yet, but those are some of the things that need to happen on different levels, parents, teachers, government. There needs to be an embrace of technology. It's not coming to take our jobs, it's coming to make our lives easier. I think that mindset shift needs to happen, and it will be easy. It really is. Think of the cost of a tablet, and that's also one of the things that we've done recently, and we're starting to see traction as well with that. When you can buy a ULesson subscription, right? Because you already have a device, you have a laptop, but you can also buy a ULesson plus device bundle, right? Which means you don't even have to worry about that. We may do it in a better way by making provision for device financing and making it easy for people to break these payments. But there's a lot that needs to happen. I think that the start of that is that mental mind shift.
Thank you so much, Tayo. Thank you very, very much. It's time for us to wrap up the panel. We're out of time. But before we go, can I please ask that Tayo shares in the chat box, information that people might need to access more of the ULesson resources, whether it's some of these private labs that you spoke about or the other resources that ULesson has. And then Shanilia, people would like to have the website or the platform that you mentioned. Can you please pop that in the chat box as well? Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Thank you for your time. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Let's give them some virtual claps, some virtual applauses for our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for having us, MBCC and EduFirst. Over to you, studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, our amazing speakers. And of course, thank you to our moderator. It has been a very informative and educative section. I've been taking notes, and I know a lot of us have been taking notes as well. So this brings us to the end of the first panel section, Education Beyond Walls. So to take us further into the conference, we have a student innovative technology showcase from our students at Queen's College, Yaba. And Queen's College, we are ready for you. Please go ahead. Okay, so while we wait for them, we'll have a quick video from our gold sponsor, Stanbic IBTC. Thank you.
Set I want.
Stanbic IBTC.
Set I want.
909.
I want.
Artist Wallet. Gigi. Stanbic IBTC. 909. Whoa, it can be. When you use 909. Gigi. Send money via 909. Buy airtime via 909. Sub data via 909. Pay bills via 909. That's the 909 ash. Money miss road and no cash. How you go do birthday bash? That's the 909 ash. 909 is the gang code. Dial am now with all phones. Run that deal with the swift flow. Make you bust my brain with the whole show. Just try am now if you don't know. No darling for the gang code. Stanbic IBTC finish work code. Use Artist Wallet if you want code. Set I want gang. 909 gang. Pay bills gang. Account opening gang. Set I want loan approved gang. Send me your account number gang. Credit alert gang. Gang. Star 909 ash is your new code. One before ash if you want code. Sake of the super app, no app. You've got code but you're not gang. In fact, we are all gang. Gang where they use sharp code. Gang where they move. Gang where they send moolah. Gang where sword be last. This gang is your short code. Dial star 909 hash to join the gang today.
Okay, Queen's College, are you ready for us? We'll have you now. Okay, so we'll come back to Queen's College. At this point, we'll proceed to our next panel section, themed The Cost of Adopting Technology. So at this point, I'd like to invite our speakers, the MD of United Cisco, Mr. Toyin Olatayo, the co-founder of Digital Encode Limited, Dr. Adewale Obadare, and our moderator, the Chief Executive Officer of TISU Practice Consulting Limited, Mrs. Elizabeth Olufin. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, MBCC and EduFirst for organizing this and for inviting me to moderate this panel. It's really a pleasure to be here. So in line with the theme for the 2021 African EduTech Conference with Education and Technology, Bridging the Gap, this panel topic will cover the cost of adopting technology. Just a bit of a background. In some countries, many countries, October is the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. That's very significant because that possibly tells us that there are gaps to be filled, right? And technology adoption strategy is often pursued also to save huge capital investments, including those related to support and risk, sometimes to share risk. People do, develop their technology strategy, and then to bridge the technology divide faster. But at their associated costs, and that's why this panel is, has been set up. We need to be able to understand that. The COVID-19 pandemic has also heightened the race to accelerate digital development. Even before the COVID-19, many jobs have been transformed by technology. We are all aware of that. Moreover, since this is, an African conference, according to AU Agenda 2063, by 2063, African countries will be among the best performers in global quality of life measures. This will be attained through inclusive growth strategies, job creation, increasing agricultural production, investment in science, technology, research, and innovation, gender equality, youth empowerment, basic services, including health, nutrition, education, shelter, water, and sanitation. To help us understand this topic better, we have very lovely, experienced experts. Mr. Tonyo Lutaya is the MD, Cisco, and Dr. Wale Obadare, co-founder, Digital Encode Limited. Thank you for joining us for this discussion.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Great. So let us start. First of all, I would like to get your opening thoughts as regards this topic, but very particularly why you think this is very important, and why now? Why should we be talking about this now? Mr. Badari, would you like to start? Good to see you again.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Olofi, nice to see you. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to cross-fertilize ideas with everyone, every participant, distinguished participant on this platform this afternoon. Yeah, so to your question, I think there's no better time to have this discussion because just like you rightly said, COVID accelerated a lot of digital transformation in every sector of the economy, in every sector. And of course, education is not exempted. Of course, prior to COVID, a lot of in the education sector, technology has been changing the way we've been doing things, right? Before COVID. But what we have seen is the acceleration, because right now we could really tell the states. In fact, I think COVID helped us to actually do some form of self-assessment of how education has impacted technology. Do you understand? Because you could see, especially in Africa. So when we're talking about Africa, let's come to Nigeria. You know, a lot of schools could leapfrog to online remote learning. You know, because if you look at the percentage of the schools, even private schools that could even easily pivot to a remote or online or virtual learning, honestly, I think the percentage is almost like 10%, you know, because they were all disrupted when COVID happens. So it means that the way they have been looking at technology is just about, okay, you know, because a lot of schools just believe, oh, it's just about having computer systems in just one corner of the rooms. Okay, let's come after break, let's come and do lesson. No, but technology impact on education is now more than that. It means that right now with technology, we should be able to, without, you know, the fall and, you know, technology is without the brick and mortar, we should be able to, you know, have a conducive place of learning. We should be able to, you know, have an effective and efficient learning platform, and which is what the technology, you know, is bringing right now immediately, you know, just, you know, post-COVID. But then, you know, talking about the cost of technology, you understand? So I think the cost is huge, because the cost of technology, you have to look at it from the total cost of ownership. And what do I mean by total cost of ownership? Total cost of ownership means that when you're talking about the technology cost, you look at the cost of the hardware, you look at the cost of the software, and then of course there are other supporting infrastructures. And when we are talking about the supporting infrastructure, the cost of the internet, the cost of bandwidth, there's so many associating costs when it comes to the cost of technology. But oftentimes we are always very streamlined to just think, oh, it's just about just getting a computer system. No, the cost is, it is an all-inclusive cost, which is the cost of hardware, the cost of the software that will run on the hardware, and then all the associated connecting for communication, internet, and what have you. Yes, I think that's my perspective to start.
Thank you for your opening remarks. Very interesting thoughts. We're going to engage further on some of the things you've highlighted. But right now, let's get Mr. Latayo's thoughts on, why should we be discussing this and why now?
Yeah, thank you very much, distinguished participants and moderators. Well, e-learning has always been on for a very long time, but just like my co-panelists have said, Dr. Badari, that the COVID-19 pandemic really accelerated the growth, the penetration of and the acceptance of the e-learning platform. Concerning the cost of adoption of technology, just like a week ago, there's this company called Gartner. They are IT research-based company they are based in the United States of America. So they gave an interview to CNBC, and during the interview, they projected that the global IT spending is going to hit $4.5 trillion. That's their projection. Of course, that's a very huge amount of money. But the question is that how much of this spending, the $4.5 trillion, are we committed to spend as a people in Nigeria, looking at Nigerian perspective and all that? I know that it's very easy to throw that question to the government, but I want to say that we all have a responsibility in terms of taking responsibility for the cost of adoption of technology. As an institution, as individual, as parents, just beside the government, even as individual, you would need to take that responsibility. Dr. Badari mentioned some things associated with the cost of adopting technology, like cost of the hardware itself and the rest of them. But beside that, we are looking at the cost of producing the same technology. We're looking at the cost of, maintenance and the cost of defense. I think that's where the cybersecurity comes in. So these are the components of the cost. And then for me, I will look at the cost of research, because in our organization, we're promoting research and development. And that's what countries like China and the other Asian tigers have done. They place premium on value on investing in research and development. And that's why they have their own technology. For every technology you have in the West, you have a similar technology over there in China and the rest of them. And I think this is what Nigerian government and we as a people can also look at. And on our own part as organizations, sometimes ago we launched a program talking about cost of adoption. We know that investing in technology is very huge, but we realized that there's something we can do about it while waiting for the government. And so we launched a program called the Mind Wide Open program, which allows access to technology to be available, to be affordable, and to be accessible. We're talking about accessibility and increased internet penetration. And over the last 10 years, we'll be able to do our bits in ensuring that globally competitive varsity education is accessible, available, and affordable to Nigerian youth, including this same infrastructure and all that. So for me, I think this is a better time to discuss about that and to also take action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Latayo. Thank you, Dr. Badari. You have mentioned to us that there are costs associated with the hardware, infrastructure, the software, but definitely also the support, all the support infrastructure as well. But also cost of defense, as you put it, Mr. Latayo, the cost of defense, right? Security. And it's on that note that I'm going to get you to talk a little further. I know you've just shared with us your opening remarks, but I think because you mentioned the issue of defense and security, I would like to get your thoughts on what do you think? How is cybersecurity changing education? Please tell us.
Yeah.
Mr. Latayo.
Thank you so much, moderator. Cybersecurity has come to stay in our today's world. Like I said before, cybersecurity has always been there, but few people paid attention to it. But with this COVID-19, billions of devices have been connected. And with this connectivity, it has opened up the cyberspace, for people to be vulnerable to attack. And so what do we need to do? What should institutions do? Is to place emphasis on cybersecurity education. Gone are the days where cybersecurity education is for the expert or for those who want to pick up a career to become a cybersecurity analyst or system security engineer. Today, just like normal security is for everybody, you will hear the military people or the police telling you that security is for everybody. So cybersecurity is actually for everybody. People need to learn to stay safe in the cyberspace. Last year also, we launched a campaign called Staying Safe in the Cyberspace. So it's very important for people to learn how to stay safe, because right now we are online, we are connected, we are all from different places and all that. So we are operating in cyberspace. And so people need to understand, apart from knowing how to operate, they also need to know how to stay safe. So cybersecurity education has become very important. And I think the government and all stakeholders should look at spreading this education all around, including schools, even down to our children. Most of us have children 5 years old, 4 years old, that they'll pick up your tablet, and they'll start surfing the internet. If care is not taken, they might move it into a particular software and download what can put you into trouble as far as cybersecurity is concerned. So there needs to be that education, and that's what I think we should look at, and also to take concrete action, which I think this platform is going to do at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Latoyo. You have mentioned that, very importantly, that cybersecurity is the business of everyone. And so this is about lifelong learning, not just the four walls of the secondary of the school system. So everybody needs to be sensitized about the importance of cybersecurity. You've also mentioned that this has curricular implications as well. So we need to look into that as well, to what extent from the early school age to, wherever it's applicable really, up to the tertiary institution and beyond, even for adult education. To what extent do we have curricula that reflect today's needs in that regard? Thank you for sharing with us. Dr. Badare, and looking at I know you've done a lot of things, your company, recently I've won some awards and all of that. And I really would like you to speak to us about addressing the skills and resource gaps in technology adoption. What should be the focus of African tertiary institutions, governments, and policy advocates? Mr. Badare, Dr. Badare, you might need to unmute yourself. Yes.
All right. Okay. So I think that before I'll answer the question, I'd like a bit to go back to the, the cost, in terms of the cost of defense, talking about cybersecurity, because overall, when I started, I talk about the cost of total cost of ownership. Because what we have seen today is, okay, even, before talking about the advocacy, I think that we've done advocacy very well. We've been talking about these for decades, but I think the challenge that is impacting on the advocacy is the resource, which is actually the infrastructure that has to be in place. You understand? And putting this infrastructure in place, which is where what Mr. Tayo is actually, Olutayo is trying to talk about, the cost of defense, because the reality on ground is, most of from experience of what we have seen, especially in the education sector, when you buy a computer system today, what do you see? Most of the time, the software that runs on the system, which is the operating system platform, generally, even within the elite, what do you see is most of those operating systems are actually not licensed. They are crack version, and everybody just think that, oh, it's just okay to use it. So from the operating system that runs on the system that is not licensed, and then of course, part of the defense mechanism is most of those systems also does not have an antivirus. An antivirus is a protective software that help you prevent your system from being hijacked from the cyber criminals or the hackers, so to say. In fact, oftentimes a lot of parents, teachers download free antivirus and they think they are protected. So of course, which makes introduce a lot of risk within the sector, because right now, unfortunately, when you are on the internet is actually is a public space, unfortunately. So it doesn't recognize whether you're a bank, whether you're a financial institution, whether you're a very sophisticated user or you are an unsophisticated user. The internet is just there. It's like a free expressway, where if you don't know how to drive, you can actually, there could be an accident and anything could happen to you. So in the same vein, from the education sector, we need to understand all of this. And then, make sure that most of all of this software, you need licensed software, in a nutshell. And then also, because when you use most of these unlicensed software, what do you experience? There's actually an attack called the ransomware. Ransomware is synonymous to digital kidnapping. Digital kidnapping, when you click on unsolicited link, probably maybe you are, just like Mr. Olutayo said, you are trying to do research, and in the course of doing your research, don't forget, you are using your system to connect to the internet to do the research, right? And while you are doing it, you don't have a licensed operating system. You don't have a licensed antivirus that is updating you to protect you against all the aforementioned risks, like malwares and all of that on the internet. What is going to happen to you is your system will be digitally kidnapped. I've seen a lot of my friends that their system all of a sudden just got encrypted and they could not have access to their system again. In fact, one that just happened recently was a friend of mine that is doing his PhD. This is a research work of almost 4 years. And while he was doing research, the entire system, disappeared until, because why? The operating system he was using was not licensed, no antivirus. And guess what? Also, he was using a public Wi-Fi. He was using a public Wi-Fi, and using the public Wi-Fi, most of the time, even, so there's so many associated risks for this cost of defense, because, if you connect to a public Wi-Fi, let me be honest with you, anything you are doing on that internet space, within that space, all these cyber criminals, these fraudsters, all of these bad guys, there is a technology concept called sniffing. Sniffing means that, I will have the ability to be able to, capture everything that you are doing within that space at that particular point in time, because you are using the open public Wi-Fi. So what am I trying to say in essence is, so now talking about advocacy, you can see we can keep talking about, we have to use technology to aid learning. We have to use, for more inclusive education, and if we don't fundamentally address, how can we, what are the ways, innovative ways we can bring down the cost of all of these? You understand? And one of the costs is, because in South Africa and some other African environment, they are leveraging the use of open source technologies. You understand? So there are initiatives in India. The India government work with most of these OEMs. OEMs are the original equipment manufacturer. They work with them. They do negotiation with them. I think we need to have that engagement first. You understand? To aid in our advocacy, because if the cost doesn't come down, you understand? So when we explore, the bilateral relationship between these OEMs, also we need to ensure that we're leveraging open source technology, because the open source technology licensing scheme is different from the way a Microsoft or other licensed or paid for OEMs operate. For instance, if you use Linux today, if you install Linux on all the systems in the schools today, there is no cost of license. The cost is going to come down, because the only cost you're going to be looking at is the cost of the hardware, because the open source And then, of course, most of the Linux operating system out there, they are not impacted, all right, with all these virus and stuff like that. So in accelerating the advocacy, in making the advocacy more impactful, we need to learn how to leverage the power of using open source technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badari. You've mentioned very key critical issues: sustainable and responsible use of being, online and using technology. Very critical, both for individuals. You've given us some very simple education. Basic things like make sure that you have a licensed operating system, make sure you have your antivirus, make sure that you are not connecting to public Wi-Fi. You don't carry your office work and connect to public Wi-Fi and risk losing all your life's work or even IP, intellectual property and all of that. You've given us examples in that regard, but you've also mentioned some things as regards bridging the resource gaps. Perhaps the private sector, the government also can look into what can bring down the cost of access as well. And that's very interesting. But just before I let you go, I wanted you to talk a little bit about skills strategy. In all of this talk, what can we do about skills, matching skills with all the gaps that there is with technology, the technology adoption?
Okay, yes. So thank you very much, Mrs. Olofin. So in bridging that skill gap, I think the very first thing that we have to do, and I don't know, all the stakeholders on this panel today, there is a need for a curriculum revamp, to be honest with you. Unless our curriculum today is changed, because most of the things, which has been a topic of discussion for a very long time. In fact, I was in a conference like 2 weeks ago, and I was, it wasn't exactly a week ago. Yeah, today is Thursday. I was at Covenant University, you can imagine, at a graduation ceremony, and I was having a discussion with them. And it will shock you that, some of the questions, even at the graduate level, some of the questions I was asking them about the latest trend in technology, most of them are still like, they can't tell what is happening in the real world. Unlike their contemporaries, in fact, most of the time when I'm giving example, I don't like to give example of the US. I don't want to give the example of UK. I like to give example of countries that are like Nigeria, which is why I like to use India a lot. If you look at India's strategy for upskilling in education, look at what they have done. In fact, that's a good model for us, which is why today, in fact, there's this joke on the internet recently that President Modi was asked, that who is ruling the world? When they asked the president of India, as at the time, the president, Trump was the president, and the president of China, they were in a meeting and they were asking them, who is ruling the world? And the president of the United States of America and China were fighting to say, no, China is ruling the world. But do you know what President Modi said? That's the president of India. He said, well, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but today, the MD of Microsoft is who? MD of Microsoft is an Indian. MD of MasterCard, India. MD of Google, India. MD of Cisco. It was mentioning the MDs, the managing directors and the chief executive officers of most of the Fortune 100 companies in the world. Guess what? They are all Indians. And it was because of the strategy that India had decades ago on education. Education is so affordable. My experience with India, in fact, personally, about 5 years ago, there's this course I wanted to attend in the UK. The same, in fact, with British Standard Institute. The British Standard Institute was running that course for £4,000 in the UK. That is the cost of learning alone without flight and accommodation. In the course of research, I was shocked. The same British Standard Institute, I'm telling you, this is a true life story. This is what happened to me. I saw the same course in India. Guess how much? It was 70,000 rupees, which is equivalent to $500. Honestly, in fact, I had to ship myself to India for weeks because instead of paying £4,000 for one course, I was in India for like 3 weeks doing like 3-4 courses, because now, even with that, I have saved a lot of money. Why? Because of the strategy, the government. So what am I trying to say in essence is, these stakeholders in education has to engage the government. They need to engage in changing the curriculum. There are new, because these children, especially the millennials and the Gen Z, they are digital natives. We are digital immigrants, so we can take excuses for not being able to match up with our contemporaries. But this generation, they are digital natives. We're going to be doing them a lot of disservice if this curriculum is not changed. Learning new realities, machine learning, artificial intelligence, a lot of things that they need to learn. I think it starts from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a lot of what you've said as feedback for the organizers. And of course, I don't want to remove myself from being part of that since I serve on the LET committee, because you have mentioned the need to have public-private work done in improving and upskilling, reskilling, looking at the curricula so that it can work for today's generation and of course future generation. All of this, again, thinking of strategy, the master plan for a country like Nigeria, the vision that we have for ourselves, in the world politics and world economy. So thank you very much for that. But very quickly, before we go to the Q&A session, I'm just going to get both of you to answer, a question each. Mr. Olutayo, a lot has been said about, I wanted to ask you this question, but I did notice that we've already mentioned a few things that we could do to make sure that we can have an enjoyable and safe experience, while using technology. But maybe that there will be some other ideas you may have. What should parents, teachers, students, businesses, and then those involved in quality education access, the support groups, what should they be doing? What should they know? Basic, like give them top things that they should know about cybersecurity.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so far so good. Cybersecurity education has been made very simple now. Unlike in those days where you have it in a very difficult language to understand. Like I said before, where it is assumed that those who want to take up a career in cybersecurity, they want to learn what cybersecurity is. So today, there are a lot of resources, just basic cybersecurity skills for lawyers, for engineers, for doctors, for non-IT professionals, and all that. So the important key is knowledge. Without knowledge is really powerful. Just like Dr. Badari said, the digital space is just like an ungoverned space. It's like traveling in an ungoverned area where you have people that can attack you and things like that. So you need to understand first of all, the routes to take. Let me just give this analogy. You're traveling from town A to town B. And we all know that this town A to town B has a lot of security issues, just like we have today, issues of kidnapping, being robbed, and the rest of them. But then you have to move to that town B from town A. So the basic knowledge is to understand, first of all, which of these routes, at least, is less vulnerable to attack. 2, what are the basic things do I need to harm myself with in order not to fall victim of this attack while moving? Because whether you like it or not, information moves all over the cyberspace. And one thing these attackers are looking for is those informations, to thwart it, to do something with it, to steal it, or to use it against you. And so so parents, support groups, educators should work with education authority to adopt basic curriculum. And those things are everywhere. Then the second thing I think they need to also do is to collaborate with IT professionals, the OEMs, Cisco, the international companies, even the local companies. Like Dr. Badare is a cybersecurity expert. I don't see any reason why educators, stakeholders in the education, whether private or public, should engage companies like them to teach their staff, to teach their employees, and also their students. In this country that we're talking about, like India, even Dubai, what these countries have done is to match, let me say, is to bridge the gap between industry and academic. You know, in Nigeria, there's still that wide gap. The academics are there. Somebody will say, I'm a professor of this. But you see, it's good to be a professor of cybersecurity. But are you a practitioner of cyber? Do you really understand what it takes? So there must be that gap. There must be that handshake. Industry practitioners and educators. With that, some of the problems we're experiencing on cyber issues will be solved. Another point I'd like to make, which although I know it's going to be a long-term effort, might not be very easy now. Learning technology in their local language. Can that work in Nigeria? If I need to learn cybersecurity, can I learn it in Hausa, Igbo, or Yoruba? So that somebody who has not gone to the four walls, or who doesn't have a formal education, can understand what he needs to do while transferring money through his phone, or while doing basic stuff on the internet. Is that possible? It might not be possible now, but I think we should start looking at that. Maybe have a kind of 10-year plan that we need the next 10 years. All the technology courses, let's say how we can adopt it for us to learn it in our local language. Most of these Cisco courses, Microsoft and the rest of them, they're actually translated in other languages. You know, you can study Cisco, for instance, you can study Cisco in Arabic, you can study it in Chinese, you can study it in German, in Spanish. So what stops us from doing that? So I believe that can also help. So when you have that, then we have what we call all-inclusiveness, digital inclusion. So the vulcanizer, the local groundnut seller at Oyingbo will be able to understand what the cybersecurity is because you are speaking in his or our local language. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Lutayo. To leave no one behind. You said so many things. And you know, and I think it's a responsibility for all of us. I think we have a good group of people here. I see here right now about 187 participants. It's a challenge for us to try to be part of this story of making sure that technology can be in our local languages so everyone is carried along. Nobody's left behind. That's sustainability, that's responsibility. And then I think that message is very succinct. But then just, Mr. Bade, very, very quickly, can you please tell us cyber mentoring? What is it? And very importantly, I'm particular about standards because I know you are particular, what you stand for is about standards as well. So please tell us about it, but also tell us about how we can have standards as regards that. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Olofin. Okay, so talking about standards in cybersecurity, talking about cyber mentoring, you know, so I think beyond the student, everyone has to be, you know, mentor in cybersecurity. Everyone, because right now we are all using technology, both the parents, the teachers, everyone within the value chain, you know, in tech education. So everyone needs the, in fact, this is the advice I gave to everyone now, that in the same way we talk about emotional intelligence quotient, the same way we talk about financial intelligence quotient, you know, all those kind of different quotient. For cyber mentoring, everyone connected to this platform today, and of course to their children and everyone, needs what we need cybersecurity intelligence quotient. We all need to increase our cybersecurity intelligence quotient. What do I mean? Because to be able to protect these children, because today it's just like the way we have all learned driving. We have learned driving not just because we are drivers, but because we want to know how to drive a car. So we need to, you know, because today a lot of children are addicted to pornography, just like Mr. Olutayo said, but because the parent does not even know what to check for. They don't know how to go to the history of the phones they're giving to the child to know, let me check what are the kind, beyond just going to your school website, what are the kind of sites do you go to? a lot of honestly, I can tell you, 80% of children are addicted to pornography today because nobody, the cybersecurity intelligence quotient of the teachers and the parents are very poor. And believe me sincerely, like I mentioned, I said, these children are digital natives. You don't, in fact, the way it works with them, they don't even need to learn. They know when they see a tech gadget, they know how to operate it. While you are still struggling because you're a digital immigrant, they know how to navigate through. So we need to get to that level. Because another critical thing why we all need the cyber mentoring is because now we are building software for education. You know, I'll tell you what happened to a practical thing, a life story that happened to a family friend. The boy came out with first class, and then guess what? When I saw that result, I was a bit curious. I was asking him one or two questions, and lo and behold, do you know what this guy did? Both him and his friends, they were sophisticated enough because they are digital natives. And find out that the school e-learning platform, the result learning platform, they broke into it through a technical means called SQL injection. SQL injection means the ability, they have those software they've downloaded free of charge on the internet. They've broken into the database of the school and they were able to modify all their results. Yes. These children, these children have that capacity to do all of these things right now, which is why to say that we all need cyber mentoring from that perspective, we need to know, because technology is changing our lives right in our presence. All parents, teachers has to go to learn for security fundamentals, because that's the only way you will be able, even when a company come around to sell you software, you know, now from standard point of view, you want to know from standard point of view, has that software gone through software development life cycle? As it follow best practice for implementation? Because there are 4 things as I round up, you know, in this standard, because any system, any technology system can be digitally invaded. If there are issues with these 4 factors, the architecture, the design, implementation, and the operation of that platform. So what am I trying to say in essence is, you know, but when you have been cyber mentored, you know what to check for. You will know whether the architect, before you pay for that software, you'll be able to check fundamentally whether it has been implemented with the right best practice all over the world. You understand? So which is why everybody has to increase their cybersecurity intelligence quotient. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Badare. I really would love to have both of you tell us more, and but we have limited time, and I don't want the participant to miss out on engaging with you, because they have some interesting questions for you. Some of them are, of course, you have mentioned in some way, so I would just wait. Talking about the handshake, somebody did mention about the MBCC also organizing trade fairs so that we can have this handshake possible. I just wanted to read that. Okay, so cost has been a major threat to education sector in Nigeria. What is the likely possibility of this organization setting aside a week, inviting ICT companies for a trade fair for schools and individuals? I'm not really going to ask you to attend to that. I think that's a feedback which we will take on, because Mr. Olutayo already mentioned about the handshake. Dr. Badare also said a few things as well. But there are a few questions as well. For Mr. Toyin Olutayo, how can we address the issue of poor internet connection in Nigeria? That's a question for you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. To address the poor internet connectivity, everything still boils down about the technology and also has to do with cost. But I think countries that have been enjoying internet access all over the world, they took a deliberate step to ensure that they have penetrations of internet access across board. And not only that, the internet is very smooth. I think it's all about infrastructure. It's all about planning. It's all about policy. And this is where the government also comes. The government can come with a policy. The government can create an enabling environment to invite investors. Internet is a big business, and people need to see it as a business. And that is why our bankers need to also play a key role. The fund managers, sponsors, promoters, people who are sponsoring events and all that, they can decide to sponsor a particular community of schools, for them to have broadband, internet access, build infrastructure, and also ensure that the cost of renewing the license fee is, very, very low. So it's all about funding, it's all about policy, it's all about government looking into that particular direction. I think that's just because internet is a technology that allows people to reconnect to the cyberspace and to be able to work digitally. And so this thing comes with technology, like we said, the cost comes with a cost. Just like that company said, Gartner, that $4.5 trillion is likely to be spent by 2022 concerning adoption of technology. So we must be willing to spend money, and governments can create that enabling environment. With enabling environments, it might be easier. For instance, bringing down the cost of power. For instance, ensuring that where the fiber optic cables needs to go through, there are no issues of right of way. There's also the legal issues also there, because when you are building ICT infrastructure, you don't encroach on people's land and things like that. So there's really a lot to do. It's not something we can really conclude in one day, but a step in the right direction will get us our desired objective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lutayo. I seem to hear you say something about making sure we can work rather than in silos, to have us work as an integrated unit, so that all the related, ministries, persons are actually sitting down to work out a solution, innovation, so that to attend to that question, we have to explore innovation as well, so that this can be accessible to everyone, not to leave anyone behind. There are a number of questions here, and I think I will try to summarize what the idea is. Some people would like to have solutions to some of these problems, because some of these problems have stayed with us. And one of those things, of course, is very quickly, which I think is within your control for the panelists. I think some people are asking for your contacts, Dr. Badere, so that they can already take this handshake further. So if it's something you're willing to do, you can please share in the chat box, so that people can then see how they can discuss, how to take these solutions to their workplaces and to other things that they want to do. So there's a particular question for, that request is from someone called Bumi Adedayo. So you may want to attend to that. But I would also say to the participants, you can feel free to also contact MBCC to facilitate that for you as well. There's a question here. I think we have a few minutes, and just if you can just spend almost like 1 minute on this one. What can we do about the perceived cost of adopting technology in Africa? I think the most interesting word there is perceived high cost. Dr. Bader, I think you wanted to attend to that, yes.
Okay, so one word. It's actually not a perceived cost, because really, when you look at, if you want to really buy a functional technology system, because you see the cost of the processing, a lot of things, so that I don't start repeating myself. I think the education stakeholders should learn how to leverage on open source technology, and open source technology, in a simple word, are technologies, they run on GNU license, which is like, it's open source, it's free. You don't need to pay for the license of the software. And there are so many innovation. I think that way in India, most of all of these places that we talked about, aside from just having a strategic partnership with all the OEMs, fundamentally open source is going to aid innovation. It's going to aid innovation, and then it's also going to help in, combating most of the risk, because just like I saw in the chat, some people are asking, yes, we already know all these problems, ransomware, hacking, and everything. There is nothing too sophisticated about most of these hackers. I think the route for the controls that we need to put in place is actually what I mentioned earlier too. Make sure that your computer system, operating system, whatever platform you're using, must be a licensed one. Don't go to Ikeja Computer Village and they will reinstall for you, or you go to slots, you give them 5,000 naira and they reinstall an operating, and you say, you're okay. You are not okay, to be honest. So you need to buy licensed softwares. Yes, which is actually what is bringing up the cost. You need to have a licensed antivirus. Don't download free AVG and think that you have an antivirus. You know, you need to.
Thank you, Dr. Badare. Thank you. I know you cannot overemphasize that. I know it's because it's very critical and it's very important. But because, again, you know, I'm also trying to keep to the time because of another panel that's going to come up after ours. I would just allow both of you to give your, if possible, 30 seconds last, you know, what do you want to say? You know, your one thing you want someone to take away from this conversation. Mr. Lutayo, what would you want to say to our participants, to everyone? And thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. My closing remark would be this, that cost is the function of cost is relative, you know, and we need to ask ourselves and place the cost of adopting technology versus the cost of not adopting it. There's what we call the CBA, cost benefit analysis. So if I don't adopt this technology, what's it going to cost me? And if I invest my money to adopt technology, what's the cost? I'm sure by the time we weigh the two, each one of us will be able to know the direction to go to. We all know that the cost of not adopting technology is far heavier than the cost of those technologies. So we should not assume that it's expensive. We should just have a positive mind, a positive mentality. And like I say, if government can attract investors and then begin to build our indigenous engineers, have a platform where Nigerians can create their own technology and produce their own technology, I think within the next 5 years, we should also be talking like Indians and the rest of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So innovation and adoption at the same time, not leaving that one of them out as well. Dr. Badare, the last remarks.
Last remark, everyone on this panel today, leave this place and make sure that the way you have learned how to be your financial intelligence quotient, go and build your cybersecurity intelligent quotient. That's the only way you can survive this digital era. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Badare. I have learned a lot. Thank you, Mr. Lutayo. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. I'm really grateful that I got a chance to moderate this. And thank you, NBCC and edufirst.ng for having this panel. From me, it's bye-bye.
Thank you to our amazing panelists. This has really been awesome. My notes are getting full. I don't know about the rest of us. Yes. So quickly, we have an interesting, just a short, interesting poll that we want everyone to participate in. So please participate in the poll section. It should pop up on your screen any moment from now. Oh yeah, I'm already seeing some votes. Thank you. Okay, so while this is going on, we would like to invite the students from Queen's College. Are you ready for us now? Yeah, lots of us are coming in. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we'll go on a short break while the poll keeps going on, and we'll take a video from our gold sponsor, Stanbic IBTC. Thank you.
Get an edge when preparing for exams. Download the Exam Paddy app to help you practice for your final exams. By downloading the Exam Paddy app, you will be able to take CBT exams. You can practice for Junior WEC, Senior WEC, NACO, JAMB, SAT, and Common Entrance. The app is specially designed for primary school students, junior secondary school students, and senior secondary school students. Using the mobile app, a student will be able to learn from Nigerian curriculum-based materials and the best quality tutorial videos. Choose from hundreds of lesson videos and exam paddy. Sign up now and join the future of learning. Check out our website exampaddy.ng and download the mobile app version from Google Play Store. Exam Paddy. Exams just got easier.
Okay, so we have Queen's College ready. So let's have him. Please unmute yourself, turn on your video. I can see the video on. Please unmute yourself, you're muted. Okay. So I also like to confirm if the second school, FGC Ikinru, is ready for us. FGC Ikinru, if you are ready, please, let's have you.
We are ready, ma.
All right, thank you. Let's go. Please turn on your video.
Okay. All right.
Okay, please introduce the innovation and introduce yourselves.
All right. Madam, can we proceed?
Yes, proceed, please.
All right. All right. Start.
Good day, everyone. My name is Adere Arelua. I'm a student of Federal Government College, Ikinru. I'm presently in SS1. Now my project here is the hydraulic robot arm. The hydraulic, in modern time, in modern world, human labor is hard to find. So it is essential to find replacement to human labor, a replacement that does not promote promotion, that does not promote pollution. Most machines have been created to replace human labor. But most of these machines rely on pollution. They don't make use of green energy. But here, I've made a carton model of an hydraulic air pressure, which makes use of air pressure, not of water. The carton right here is the foundation of how the hydraulic works. The rubber pistons here, the controls to how the machine operates. Here we have materials like long rubber hoses, rubber pistons, wooden sticks, cartons, and mainly these rubber pistons right here. I'm going to demonstrate how this is going to work by making sure this material goes into this box right here. Firstly, these two controls are for the up and down movements. This control right here is for the grill, which is to keep it together, to enable to take the material into the box right here. This right here is for it to be able to move to the desired place so that you can get this material into this box right here. Firstly, I start by raising the hands up exactly to where the material goes to, and then riding the jaw in order to pick the material which is right here. And then lower. I'm just going to demonstrate how this works carefully. Second, I'm going to do this right here. Then take it this desired place. I'm going to draw it. Exactly, I'm going to take it back to the desired place also. Then draw the line. Also, I'm going to close the lines. Here, I've demonstrated how the robotic can move things from one place to another. If this is advanced and more modernized, we the young generation can take part in it and make our world a more easier and more better place. And in the nearest future, I would love to build more machines like this on a larger scale, fully supported with AI and green energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Adeoye Oreoluwa, for that innovative tech showcase. That is amazing. I know we're all giving you virtual class from here. That was a hydraulic robotic, very, very innovative. Thank you. That was really fantastic. So Queen's College, do we have you now? Queen's College, are you ready for us? Okay, so we'll proceed to the third panel section. The last two sections have really been amazing. Like I said, my note is full. I'll create space for more, I have no choice. Okay, so we are going to start our next panel section right away. Our theme is curriculum innovation and delivery. Our panelists are present and I would like to welcome them. Firstly, we have the Director of Education, Corona School Trust Council, Mrs. Amelia Dafeta. We have the Principal, Green Spring School, Lekki, Mrs. Feisara Ojugo. We have the Chief Executive Officer, Workforce Group, Mr. Folusho Aribisala. And as our moderator, we have the Head of Corporate Communications, School Media Group, Mr. Shola Oluwadari. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Shola Oluwadari, the Head of Corporate Communication, School Media Group. And first, I would like to welcome all the panelists. Mrs. Amelia Dafeta, you are welcome. Glad to see you today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Mrs. Feishara Ojugo, I'm glad to see you too.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Welcome. Mr. Folusho Aribisala.
Good afternoon.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm also delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go on, I would also like to commend the students of LDC Kirun for that presentation. It's a great one. You'll be glad to know that what you saw displayed there is the brainchild of School Media Nigeria Limited. That demonstration was done in our center at Ikirun. That is the School Media Experience Center over there. And very soon you're going to see the one to be displayed by the Queen's College too. It's also the presence of School Media at that end. And as that's what we do in over 100 schools, federal unity colleges in Nigeria. And now the topic of discussion is curriculum innovation and delivery. You know, the major challenge of education in Africa in the 21st century is centered on the inability to deploy digital tools for teaching and learning. And you know, it is even worse when it has become difficult for government to build a curriculum that can be tailored towards the 21st century workplace and in fact home. So curriculum can be prepared for students in a way to prepare them for the future. And all of these challenges about preparation of content to match the 21st century life, you know, those are the things that we'll be looking at And I want us to center on that particular curriculum innovation and delivery. So to start with, let's just have this ground rule that we're going to introduce ourselves, the panelists will introduce themselves, and immediately they pick up the discussion in 5 minutes. So let me start with Mrs. Amelia Dafela. I would like you to center your discussion on curriculum innovation and transforming classroom. I'm saying that because you see, the other time I talked about FGC Kirum, and you can see the background. If you have opportunity of visiting that place, or you have your students visiting the place, or you have any of your students attending, children attending the school, or any of the FUC, you see what is going on in terms of transforming classroom. So I'd like you to center the discussion this afternoon on curriculum innovation, transforming classroom. So, Mrs. Dafela, you are welcome, and I'm sure you will also tell us some things going on at Corona School Trust Camp. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. Broadly speaking, a curriculum is the totality of a student's experience that occurs in the educational process. Now, the curriculum identifies learning outcomes, standards, core competencies, and everything that a student must demonstrate before it goes to the next level. Now, transforming a class, therefore, must start with innovation in the curriculum and the infusion of technology to run this curriculum. Curriculum innovation implies change. That is change from the traditional way of teacher-centered rote learning, memorization, to innovation-based curriculum, innovation-based education. Now, this must be aligned with the needs of the fourth industrial revolution, this focusing on big data, smart technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, just like what that student displayed in the video, the last session. Therefore, policymakers and school managers must, as a matter of obligation, consciously integrate technology into the curriculum. Now, if we want to innovate and change classrooms, what must happen? We require a paradigm shift from the way classrooms are run traditionally. And therefore, we look at what are our instructional strategies and what are the resources that we are going to employ in this technology-driven classrooms. Now, students must be intentionally taught. I'm sure those children in Ikiru were taught. And of course, we know that they are digital natives, but they must be intentionally taught. You know, the rubrics of robotics, artificial intelligence, big data, and all those technology buzzwords. Now, the important shift must be made using a plethora of tools. First, we talk about the blended learning on-site, and a mixture of on-site and online learning. The most adaptable and the most popular being the flipped classroom, where the teachers give assignments, give videos and all that, and the students come back into the class to discuss and what have you. Then you have the online, solely online learning, which we employed, the whole world did anyway, in one way or the other during the lockdown. And of course, you have the digital-driven classroom, where everybody is on site and the resources are being used, the devices, smart boards, interactive whiteboards, all these devices are being used in the class, using the applications, using the different applications that schools use For instance, now in our schools, we use all sorts of, we're a Microsoft school, and we use all the Microsoft tools for teaching and learning in the classroom. We have digital-driven classrooms, as well as hybrid classes and all that. So we employ all these, to transform teaching and learning in the classrooms. And of course, you have our resources that you must employ to drive technology, to have digitally driven classroom practice. And all these transform the classroom from what it used to be to a digital classroom. You have smartphones, you have televisions, you have tablets, you have devices. We have our children bringing in their own devices, BYOD, bring your own device, and all these. And then, of course, you subscribe to different learning platforms, different management systems, which help to drive the curriculum and all that. So this is how to transform the classroom from a traditionally teacher-centered classroom to a digital classroom. And that is where we are going now. And these different resources and these different platforms help to make the learner a self-paced learner, because when you are able to pace your learning, you have videos, you have all sorts of resources to help you to move at your pace, to interact with other people all over the world, and interact with the teachers and all that. That is the way that education should be going now, because this is a digitally driven world, fastly, rapidly changing digital world. And so that's the way that classrooms can be transformed to digital classrooms. Thank you.
Ms. Aluwadare, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we appreciate that fantastic presentation by Mrs. Dafeta. And not only that, she tried to also tell us what is happening in Corona schools, and how they have practically deployed that, and which is reflecting in the look and feel of the classroom. One of the things about digital education that, for instance, the organizers have also done, like EduFest.ng, is training the teachers in our schools. For example, in partnership with the Federal Ministry of Education, EduFest, I'm aware EduFest has trained over 1,200 teachers, deploying digital tools, training them, and all of that. So Mrs. Ojugo is going to be telling us how prepared are the teachers. So at EduFest.ng is doing all of this, training all the teachers, in all the FUCs, one by one, geopolitical zones. Mrs. Ojugo is going to tell us how prepared are the teachers, and of course, lecturers, in handling curriculum, so that we can have a completely digitalized learning environment. So, Mrs. Ojugo, you're welcome.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Oluwadare, and thank you for NBCC for having us. The truth really is that, there are lots of problems bedeviling the educational sector, and it is very critical that we bring those issues to the front burner. And I know that the lack of infrastructure, for example, is a huge, huge problem. But I think beyond even, or maybe side by side, the lack of infrastructure is what, Mr. Oluwadari would like me to speak to, which is the fact that even if the infrastructure were to be available, do we have, maybe it's the lecturers or the teachers ready, to take this on board? Because again, the students we're engaging with, the children that we are raising, they are digital natives, we already know that. But unfortunately, quite a number of, the practitioners in the sector are not just, we can't even call them migrants, but quite a number are still, are kind of like dinosaurs, unfortunately. And just from what we have seen, even in the wake of the pandemic, and how different institutions have responded, it is quite clear that we are generally ill-prepared as a nation. And I'm sure across the continent of Africa, there are other nations that are also grappling with the reality of where we should be. So if we take Nigeria as an example, we have 170 universities in Nigeria. Out of those 170, and of course, across this university, we have over 11,000 professors, right? Apart from the other lecturers. Now, of these 170 universities, about 79 of them are private universities. The rest are either state-owned universities or federal universities. Now, the question is, and last year is a very, very clear example, when unannounced, without much preparation, the global pandemic came on everybody. And, everybody started scrambling. But one of the things we saw clearly as an institution here at Green Springs, unfortunately, a few other schools, some organizations or institutions were able to transit almost seamlessly into online teaching and learning, right? And that means for the children in those schools, they were able, teaching and learning was, continued. There was barely any disruption. And for us at Green Springs, because already we have the virtual learning environment even before the pandemic, and that cuts across parents, students and everything, because even reports we used to send, through that platform. So by the time, the pandemic hit, it was easy for us to just transit very, very smoothly. But the tragedy is that majority of the Nigerian students, whether it is in the secondary schools or universities, were largely redundant throughout that period. And why? Because for one, in most of those schools, is either the infrastructure was outdated or completely non-existent. And so what a lot of, maybe a number of schools had to sort of leverage was maybe using WhatsApp, and some were, taking screenshots, those who could, screenshots of notes and sending to their students. Some didn't even do anything. I know a lot of, university students who practically were on their own, just surfing the internet mindlessly, except that some people decided to intervene just on the side. So, just from, what we've seen, I can say clearly that we are quite ill-equipped. For instance, the TRC and Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, as of 2018, their statistics show that about 2 million teachers are registered in Nigeria, for example. Now the question is, and they are supposed to be qualified teachers. So the question is, what does qualified mean? So qualified will mean, okay, I have one certificate, one education degree or certificate or the other. So maybe it's an NCE, BSc Ed, BA Ed, or MEd or whatever it is. But the times we are living in, it is not enough that I just have a certificate that says I've done education. The question is to be able to meet these digital natives, to be able to inspire those young people who must be the innovative, critical thinkers that Africa, that Nigeria desperately needs. I cannot, as a teacher, as an educator, I cannot be a dinosaur, for example. I must be at home, with technology. So all of the things that have been mentioned earlier, the flipped classroom, using various learning resources, the school information management system, a lot of those things will sound like technical and, like jargon to a lot of Nigerians and even educators, because there is not just enough exposure. So we had a situation where a number of lecturers were telling their students, I can't do Zoom, all this Zoom business. When school resumes, we're going to carry on with learning. So like I said earlier, a lot, a generation, as it were, of students practically had to sit back doing absolutely nothing. So I'm seeing that, the global pandemic, even though it came with a lot of hardships and different disruptions, but I think that it brought with it, tremendous opportunities. It brought with it a lot of innovations. For example, this meeting we are having 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nobody will have thought of this. We just had a student, stream live from Ikirun, and we could see the project he has done. Why? Because an opportunity has been provided and we're leveraging that opportunity. So I know, and I believe, and I'm sure everybody will agree with me, that as a nation and as a continent, we must now look at our policies. Again, we must look at the issue of even the budgetary allocation to education. Really, is it reasonable? Is it enough to address, even if what we want to take on is the training, retraining, and even getting teachers to unlearn some of the practices that may not help at this time. So I believe strongly that there is a need for us, for the government to look at policies again. There is a need for there to be a strong partnership and collaboration between the public sector and the private sector, because again, we've heard, other panelists talk about the huge cost of technology. It's a lot, but we're even talking about training. We're even talking about the exposure of the teachers and of the educators. So the question is, even if we talk exposure, again, with technology, you really can't theorize it. Even if you learn it on paper, you've got to practice it, right? You've got to keep doing it so that you are at home with it and you can work with it yourself and then deploy teaching and learning with it. So I think critically, there has to be like an urgent attention to the training of educators across the board, from the primary schools to the secondary to the tertiary institutions. And I really believe strongly that one of the prerequisites for even coming into the sector now must be that you're tech savvy, must be that you understand the technology terrain and you can deploy same to engage students, because if not, we are not engaging in a 21st century environment, unfortunately. And what that means for us as a nation and even as a continent is we're going to be light years behind other climes. And of course, that will have a great impact on our development as a people, because we know that education plays a very, very pivotal role in the advancement and development of any nation. So it is so critical that discussions such as this and engagement, so we must have pressure groups, people saying, we've got to look at what is happening in our educational sector. We've got to look at training and retraining. We've got to, sort of engage with our government to pump more funds into education so that we can improve the infrastructure and also invest a lot more in the training of staff. And of course, what that also means is for those of us who are a bit more, I would say, a bit more privileged, right, than others. Okay, so there are some educators who are in low-income schools. There are some educators who are in very rural schools. So again, the responsibility, I believe strongly that what we know and the exposure we have, that the responsibility it places on us is to see how to engage with those who are not as privileged. What are we offering? So one of the things we did during the last year, during the pandemic, was to have, we sort of opened up like free training sessions. So even though we didn't do a lot, but we sort of threw that open to teachers who may not necessarily have access to such trainings. So say, this is what we are doing, in our own school, and we'd like you to also learn some of it so that the Nigerian child can benefit. So I think a lot more of those of us who are privileged to be exposed to this technology must see, as part of our responsibility, the training and the development of other colleagues who may not be as privileged. And the truth is there are many more who are absolutely clueless when it comes to deploying technology in the classroom than the few privileged or the small percentage of those who are able to deploy technology in the classroom. Thank you. Mr. Oluwadari.
Thank you, Mrs. Thank you, Mrs. Ojibo. That's quite fantastic. You know, one thing that we must all take home in what Mrs. Ojibo has said is training and retraining. Training and retraining. I mean, she talked about Teachers Education Council, registering teachers, making sure that we have qualified teachers in school. But what does that mean? What does qualified mean? In 21st century, we are all education stakeholders, we are all parents. Some of us, we have stake in government, Ministry of Education. So what does making somebody, ensure somebody is qualified, what does it mean? In 21st century, we need to define and redefine that. You know, coming to corporate organizations, one of the things that, for instance, we are doing that we have done in school media is the development of Microsoft 365 education in schools. For instance, in the Federal Unity Colleges, we're already taking up about 9 schools that we are going to deploy the Microsoft 365 education. And we have also seen the organizer education, EduFirst, coming up with exam paddy. And for instance, if you go to the Play Store now, you can easily download exam paddy. As I'm speaking now, you can download it. You can go to the website, see the feel and the look. Now, Mr. Folusho Adedisala. Now, I just mentioned 2 organizations doing all of this to support education. How best can corporate organizations work closely with educational institutions to close the gap that exists between the educational curricula and expectations of the work environment? In 5 minutes, we'd like you to do justice to that. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oluwadari. I think that we need to go back to the genesis of the problem, so we understand the scope and the dimension of the problem. Before we move forward to, so I think there are 2 big parts to it. There are a lot of kids that are out of school. That's a different conversation completely. And there are a lot of kids that are in school but are not getting quality education. For some of my learners colleagues on the panel, the kids that attend their schools are the privileged ones. There are a large number of kids that struggle to have access to education. My own organization, we are one of the biggest recruiters in the country, and I run every day as we speak. We are running tests, and it is a struggle to get people that qualify to fit into what the business needs. And it's not really their fault. They are victims of the system. And if you go back and look at the reality, we all complain about the budget allocated to education, but the reality is that this is completely out of the government's grasp. They need the corporate society to come in and help. And I'll deal with some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that we need to start doing more as corporate entities to support the system. If you look at the country now, we have the biggest population of children out of school in the world. Based on which data you're using, is either between 10.5 and 13.2. Most kids are, they are involved in some kind of labor, which makes it difficult for them to focus in schools. Only 6% of students have up to 3 textbooks. We've heard Mrs. Ojugo discuss about lack of infrastructure and the skill gaps that the teachers have. So even when you introduce the technology, can they use it? Are they ready to use it? The issue of power, internet, and we can't all look up to the government for this. If you look at the budget for this year, I think it's about 5%, but they really can't do more than that. The total government revenue in Nigeria is only about 5% of the GDP, which means that as we speak, the power really resides in the private sector. Any kind of sustainable initiative that is going to improve education must be in partnership, but there must be policies that allow those kind of, because the private sector only spends when there's an opportunity to recoup and make profit from it. Unfortunately, that is how it is designed. So very quickly, if you look at the problem, we can break it into 2 categories. You have the primary schools and the secondary schools. which is a different issue completely, which is where we started. There are a lot of focus there to try and provide infrastructure, train the teachers, provide the technology, bring your own device to make it more affordable. Then, of course, provide content in more affordable format than textbooks, where that are easy to be delivered. Then, of course, enforce the laws. In Nigeria, children within a particular age should be in school, but the economic situation makes it difficult to enforce. So a bit more enforcement of the laws will get them into the schools. Then, of course, some awareness to reinforce the importance of education. Why am I saying this? By the time these people get to us, they have what they call fundamental gaps that it's too late to fix. Where they haven't gotten the right primary and secondary education, the foundation that they can build on is missing. Now, when we now look at the sector that I deal with more, which is the university students living and looking for jobs, you see that there are certain basic, both technical and soft skills that are not there. Many companies initially, what they were doing was to focus on people, train them for their organizations, but that's not going to help. There are a lot of other ideas in terms of that companies can adopt, and you mentioned some of them, Mr. Oluwadare. But a few other things is working with the schools to develop the curriculum and also invest in certain institutions to support skill sets that might be critical to the industry. I know that ANSA Masad has some programs like that with Unilag, where they're directly investing and growing talent to fit their industry. Then things like open days, where they get a peep into the corporate world and and what needs to happen there, where corporates run short courses for free for those schools, particularly students in their last 2 years, just to prepare them on some of the skills that we require to transition to the workplace, communication, problem solving, and a few other things. Then mentorship programs that offer one-to-many opportunities where they meet professionals that a few years ahead of them, that they can learn what it will take to make that transition so that they can start developing themselves. Then part of the gap we've also found is that the instructor-led approach for which many of these people have been trained makes it very, very difficult for them to self-learn, even when the opportunity and the tools are there. I have some employees that earn thousands of dollars working for international companies abroad, and where they made that transition is that they've self-taught themselves to write software, to program. But when we train people to be dependent on the instructor without being able to experiment and learn, we create some handicap for them to be able to transition. The corporate world is changing very quickly. The businesses are looking for people that can come in, learn, unlearn, and adapt, and help them build agility. So even how people are trained would need to change. So the internships, I want to see more companies doing what they call competitive work projects, where they throw out programs there and they fund it and they let the best ideas and they reward those students. And it also gives them the opportunity to hire those people as well. So those kind of enterprise grants that support ideas. Then of course, having industry information sessions targeted at those schools. While I was younger, we used to do field trips to organizations, where they will show you this is what we do here. And, it creates an emotional bond with those organizations and people recognize that transition, what will need to happen. Then, of course, how we recruit people as well. Having more competitive recruitment and assessment systems that prioritizes demonstrated mental ability, not just the certificates, because we know that people buy some of these certificates now. You need to go beyond the certificates that people present to what they can demonstrate as skill sets, which will force people to spend time learning when they're in school and not buying certificates. And finally, maybe a bit more controversial, people are saying that maybe we should consider legislation that also drive some commitments that when some organizations invest extensively in building skills, maybe those people might have to work with them for a year or so. It's a bit controversial, but I know the private sector, they normally will sow where they will reap. So if they know that if they put those funds there, they get talents that they can work with them for a while. Many of them will probably be more open, to doing this. So in a nutshell, we can't leave this to the government. We all need to roll our sleeves. We have about 200 million population growing at 2.55%, meaning that we add 6 to 7 million people every year. If we don't start educating them, empowering them, creating opportunities for them, we are sitting on a time bomb. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aribisala. Something was coming to my mind when you were addressing those points, but I have come to that later. Let me go to Mrs. Tafeta. She talked about classroom, transforming it and all that, but there is something that is very important that, we still have 20th century generation teaching. Now, the fun, how do you think fun can contribute to education? Fun in the classroom, because they are people who are older than us who are still teaching. They feel that what's fun in education? Everything's to be hard. How do you pass it across? But look at the national gap. So how do you think, particularly government? Now, I want us to look at students who are not attending your school, your kind of school. And let's talk about the primary school, those ones that Mr. Adibisala mentioned. How do you think government can do everything possible to ensure that teachers introduce fun to learn? In 3 minutes, I'm going to do that because we're going to go to question and answer session now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Fun is very important in education, especially now that our students, our children, our young people are very, 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 they have quite a number of things occupying their minds. They are distracted by so many things that's happening in the world. Now, like Mrs. Ojugo said and Mr. Aribisala said, the teachers need to be trained and retrained. Simple things like the phone, for instance. You train the teachers on how to use certain codes, for instance. Like you want to assess, you want to teach something. Now, instead of just talking from morning till night, teacher-centered, let the students do the doing, okay? So all you need to do, you just need a phone, a smartphone. Teach the teachers how to access some of these apps. Just put in 1 or 2, 3 apps on the phones for these teachers. Let them learn how to do them. Give them codes. For instance, you have taught something and you want to make it fun. You want to make the assessment fun. Give them a code. Let the students go on Kahoots, for instance, and then they have a quiz, and it's fun. All sorts of things are jumping, especially for pupils in the primary school. There's a lot of animation, there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of singing, and there's a lot of doing. So instead of feeding the students with so much information, but if in a fun way, using all these different apps, the students can and will learn by themselves, doing, experiential learning. That is how most children learn these days because of all the distractions that you have. A lot of them have phones, a lot of them have at least the basic applications on the laptop, the basic applications. Teach them how to do that. We are not saying go and teach them very, very serious applications and things like that. Just the basic to make learning fun. Teach them how to animate, teach them how to put color in whatever they are doing, teach them how to project, teach them just very, very basic technological skills, and they will bring fun into the classroom. A lot of singing, a lot of dancing, a lot of activities for the students to do, and that way fun will be introduced into the classroom. The students are learning to do things on their own. You know, it is very, very important that the students learn to do things on their own and not the teacher feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding them with all sorts of information. So once there's a lot of fun, once there's a lot of activity, once there's a lot of experiential learning in the classroom, fun is introduced and students will learn better. And even students will learn at their own pace, doing and using all these technological apps, you know, to make learning fun. But the most important thing is teach the educator, teach them the basic technological skills that they will need to infuse fun into the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's quite straight to the point, address the situation. I'm sure that Mrs. Dafeta is actually speaking from what you are doing over there. What is practical, introducing fun to classrooms, you know, including even the font we are using, you know, the font we are using to teach when we make presentations. You know, children they have their own kind of font, coming font and all of that. I'm sure that educators they're actually learning. And Mrs. Sochiko, you would help us to talk about the role of experiential learning in delivering social responsibility curriculum. You know, and as you also do that, you know that children with varying abilities, they have challenges, they have learning challenges. And how do you think, I'm sure you must have had experience working in an environment where children have varying learning abilities, any challenges. How do you think we can address this situation now that we're talking about deploying digital assets to our educational institutions? Thank you.
Mr. Oluwadare, I struggle to hear you a little bit, but if I understand what you said, you were asking how we support students with learning challenges. Is that what you said? Okay, because I was struggling to follow you. So again, one of the fundamental things that, or point that every educator must bear in mind, and indeed every parent, is that no two children are the same. In fact, no two individuals are the same. Everybody is unique. And the truth is, everybody has a challenge in one area or the other. And I know in time past, you know, years back, and unfortunately, it probably is still happening in some places, people did not understand learning needs, right? People did not even want, they didn't want to be associated with children that they termed different from other children. So before now, what you will have is a lot of families that have children who have one need or the other, particularly those that are very core needs, you know, children with autism, children, you know, with strong, you know, very severe autism who are, you know, very strong on the spectrum, children who have Down syndrome and all of that. What parents used to do is to hide them away. So they didn't want relatives to know that, oh, I have a child with a need. You know, they didn't want anybody to know. And unfortunately, such children were therefore kept at home and they couldn't go to school. But thankfully, I know that again for us and several schools, not a lot, but a lot more schools are opening up and they are looking into special education needs. And so how does it work? So children come to school, there are some that their needs are not even so obvious. So for example, not too long ago, incidentally, I was interviewing and somebody said, oh, I want to work in this particular area. And she said, why I want to work in that area is because of what I experienced as a child. You know, even my dad, you know, along with my teachers, you know, where would usually call me, you know, it's a Yoruba word, and I'm sure a lot of us will know it's Olodo. So it became like my second name. That was what she said. And that was because I could not access, I couldn't read on time. I found it difficult. She said it was later when, you know, eventually she struggled through and she went to uni and she wanted to do a particular course, but she ended up in the special education needs department. That was when she began to understand that what she actually had was dyslexia. And it's not that she was an olodo as she was being called, but there was a need that people did not understand, and they therefore labeled her. So again, for all educators, the first thing to realize is when children come into my learning space, every child is unique. Every child is different. So I must understand every child in that room, whether they are 25 or 80, like we're having some other schools and all of that, especially public schools. I know it's difficult, but we must know those children. So if a child is struggling, so a child is not working at target, a child is sort of struggling and struggling behind, the question is, you need to ask yourself, what can be the issue? So you begin to observe that child, you begin to check, okay, what's going on? Is it that the child can't do simple operations in math, for example? Let's say the child is in year 3 or year 2, and there is, an aspect of math. They should be able to do simple operations in addition, in subtraction, in multiplication and division, but you realize that this child is consistently working below target. It is, gone are the days when as an educator, you just label that child and you say, oh, this child doesn't know math, this child is an olodo or whatever. It's to find out, is there dyscalculia going on? And of course, as educators also, we can't say, this is what is wrong with this child. What we will do is to observe, right? And if you have the privilege of having special education needs practitioners in your school, like we do, and I know a number of schools, do, you can invite them to come and observe that child. And depending on what we are seeing, and that is the practice in our own school, we can then engage with parents to say, you know what, this is what we are seeing. This child has strengths maybe in dancing, has strengths in literacy, but there is a huge challenge in processing information or just translating information from one form to the other. And we're not quite sure what is going on, but we'd like to encourage that we do an assessment so that we are clear about what is going on with our child and we can provide adequate support. Because at the end of the day, like some of the other panelists have said, gone are the days when the teacher is the sage in the classroom. When the teacher thinks, sometimes we're interviewing and I say, why do you want to teach here? Oh, I want to disseminate knowledge or information to students. And I'm thinking, no, you are still in the woods. As a teacher right now, you are a facilitator. You make learning happen in the classroom. You provide an activity-based situation. So basically, what we then say is, as educators, what we want to do is to support every child. The classroom has to be student-centered, and every child is important, even if that child has a need. What we need to find out is, what is the need? How do we support this child so that they can be the very best that they have been proposed to be? So that is what I would say. And again, awareness is very critical across the board, both for parents, especially for educators, because there are still many educators who are unaware of anything called learning needs. So it's to continue to create awareness and help everybody understand that every child is different and we must meet every child where they are and help them to get to where they can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Every child is important. Every child. The fact that the child is giving back to, that God allowed the child to come here is important. No matter the abilities, no matter the challenges, is important. Every child is here for a purpose, and that purpose must be fulfilled. And that's the responsibility we have as educators, as parents, as adults of 21st century. Every child is important. Thank you very much. That's quite instructive. We're already into question and answer session. We all know that. We're going to hand up the session with two minutes, but we're not going to do that now. But Mr. Adebisala, I'm coming to you to speak 3 minutes. But before then, somebody was trying to ask that he was trying to assess the exam party, was talking about you have to subscribe, the environment. One thing is that nothing that is completely free as well, even in Freetown, not everything is free there. But I can assure you that the exam party that we're talking about, which is it's the best in class. It uses best in class features, media, and technology solutions to provide African students with high quality and affordable open education. Now, the exam party, for the person that is asking, let me tell you, it is affordable. As much as 1,000 naira, 1,005 that we use to browse. 1,000 naira, 1,005, you can access exam party. In the coming weeks, we're going to see more of exam party. I can assure you of that, but it's quite available for primary school, GSS 3, SS3, and all of that. So, Mr. Aribisala, Tan and GAN. I wanted to talk about this Tan and GAN, linking Tan and GAN. And two things in 3 minutes. We are going to talk about linking Tan and GAN in this digital age and adopt a school. Has it worked? How has it worked in Nigeria? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear your first question. I did hear the second one. Please, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. I talked about linking Tan and GAN in this digital age. You know, work environment, academics. We see our old lecturers there. So how do we link Tan and GAN in this digital age? And then you talk about adopt a school in 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the transition to digital is not only the schools that are struggling with it. Even in the corporate world, we're all struggling with it. As Mr. Hugo said, some schools transition, some business transition faster than others. But the worst thing is that I've noticed with digital is that it seems it's more widening the divide between the haves and have-nots, because the infrastructural requirements to make the transition need to be there. So which is why you see many of the developed and developing countries, there's a conscious effort to ensure that that infrastructural investment is in place to make that, that transition. There is a big fight in the United States over 1.7 or 1.5 trillion dollars. A lot of it is to provide infrastructure to ensure that, learning and a lot of things can happen as well. So I would say that a few things will need to happen, in our own situation. There has to be an alignment of priorities from a national level. We seem to be prioritizing things that are less important than others. We need to recognize that we need to invest in the future of Nigeria, and the future of Nigeria is in our children. Any country that doesn't do that is setting itself up to fail. We need to look at the Asian tigers, the way that they have grown by leveraging talents. The two things that we have is oil and people. Oil is getting less valuable because we're talking about renewable and clean energy now, but people would always be valuable. So we need to start investing in our people, so the right priorities. I would rather subsidize education than subsidize petrol. So there's a lot of conversations that we can have around that. If I know what 3 trillion naira can do, if you put a small part of that in the education system, we'll probably have the best education system in the whole of Africa. And compete with some of the more developed world. So we need to really identify what are our priorities as a nation and what should we be spending money on. Then, of course, once we are clear with that, we can now bring in the right policies and to say, and part of that policies, will be to allow funding to come into the sector and thrive. I think the private sector will need to drive this change as well. Then with respect to the talent there has to be a lot more aggressive education of, so you need to educate the teachers that are there now and prepare the people that are coming in. You'll be surprised that people that are being educated to be teachers, they are not even still giving them the digital skills. They're still using the curriculum that 10 years, 15 years old, without adapting to recognize that the world of teaching and learning has changed significantly. So we need to we can't throw away the people that we have, because we don't have enough. So we need to first focus on those people, skill them up, but look at the conveyor belt that creates future teachers. Then also make teaching more appealing. I believe that one of the things we can do is also to call back retirees that have a passion and make it worth their while to come in. They're not going to do it for the money. Many of them love kids. They want to sow back, but let's have a program where we can turn. My business is doing that. A lot of businesses are doing that, where we are going back to people that have left to fill the skill gap. I think the teaching profession can do that as well. We need to have short courses to teach them on how to deliver learning in itself, but their basic education and the experience becomes useful tools that you can lay that on. Then when it comes to adapt to school, it works, but it's not working at the scale, and it doesn't address kids that are not in school. So there has to be certain things that create more schools. If you look at some parts of the country, because of the turbulence there, kids can't even go to school. So you have to bring the schools to them at home. That's the only safe place for them now. Then a lot of the school infrastructure has been destroyed for one reason or the other. So while the program works, there are more structural changes in terms of we need a lot more education infrastructure that isn't there. We need a lot more IT, technology, internet, and power. We need to make devices more affordable. We need content in different languages. I don't see why a child must learn English because he wants to learn mathematics or French. You have created an avoidable obstacle. It doesn't happen in China, So also, if the child is good in Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, let's start from there. Let's start with what they have and make learning content available to them. And you can have more teachers. There's certain teachers that the obstacle that they have that they can't teach in English, but they might understand the principle. And so let's design a system that addresses our own context and helps us get from where we are to where we need to be. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a good one. Bringing in retirees to come and fill certain gap, and there is something that you mentioned now that I so love about the language. Teaching using the local language to teach students. I so love that because one of the challenges we have these days is preventing our children from speaking the local language. We call it vernacular, and then it is a problem. Even in Japan, they use their local languages to teach. So I think that is a gap the educators will have to fill. And Mrs. Dafela, Mrs. Ojugo, I'm challenging you. Please, we need chemistry, physics, quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, biology, Greek written in Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo. I'm challenging you. We need that. We need that to bring up our value system. I'm challenging you. Let chemistry be written in the language, in our languages, so that if you cannot teach it in English, you should be able to teach it in Hausa or Yoruba or any of our languages. So that's just a challenge. But before we go, in one minute, that is something that came to your mind when you were called for this assignment. That you have done fantastic. I've seen the comments over there, fantastic. But there is something that came to your mind in 1 minute. We are rounding up. You are going to tell us in 1 minute, Mrs. Dafela, Mrs. Ojugo, Mr. Adibisala, in that order. Something came to your mind when you were invited for this event, and I have not said it. You are going to say it all in 1 minute. Just drop that point as you are going away with my challenge of writing chemistry, physics, verbal listening, quantitative listening in our local language. Thank you. This is Dafela now.
Dafeta. Well, nothing stops us from doing that. In fact, we have a Yoruba app, and our Yoruba teacher is one of our, the Yoruba head of department in our school is one of our greatest high flyers. He is such a wonderful teacher, and Yoruba language is just enjoyed in that particular location. So I think that that's the way to go. And I have absolutely no problem with that. Having said that, my final thoughts, and I'll leave you with this. Number one, there must be a paradigm shift. We must train and retrain our teachers. Like I said, we must bring fun into the classroom, and we use as little as phones to do that. Finally, creativity is the foundation of education. It emphasizes the need to prepare our students to take on challenges. Students teachers, educators, everybody, we must be on top of our game in this rapidly changing, technologically driven world. Students must be guided and not instructed. Information should be made accessible. Government, educators, policymakers, let us make information accessible to as many students, as many educators as possible, so that students and everybody have access to this information. And then, again, to thrive in this evolving technologically mediated world, students must not only possess strong skills in math, English, and all this, and also technological skills, but we must give them, arm them with critical thinking skills, creativity, problem solving, persistence, collaboration, because without collaboration, we're not going to do anything. Communication, collaboration, as I said, curiosity. It's with curiosity from all the fun-infused classrooms that we can create and innovate. And we need students who will create, innovate, and put us up there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Ojugo, please, your 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much once again, Mr. Oluwadari. A lot has been said already, but for me, in wrapping up, I will go back to the issue of teacher training, because teachers are the heart and soul of any school. Schools are not made of buildings. It's not even whether the buildings are dilapidated or they are modern. The truth is there are teachers, amazing teachers in rural areas who are using local resources around them to make learning fun for their students. So it's so critical that attention is paid to teachers, whether they are in the public school system or in the private school system. And what I said earlier, the collaboration between the public and private sector is very critical. And even for us as private educators, we must see beyond our immediate community of schools and actually think about the Nigerian child. Because if we're thinking about the Nigerian child, we're going to think beyond the walls of our own schools and think of the educators engaging with those students. So for me, training is very, very critical. And I think all hands have to be on deck. The government, again, I know the budget is not enough even to solve all our problems in Nigeria, but truly, we must look at the policies again. We must look at the budgetary allocation, because investment has to be in the right direction. It is very critical. Also, one last word for me is that our learners are 21st century learners. They are digital natives and all of the other ways we can describe them. And it is a disaster that a number of them, in fact, the majority of them are still being taught using methods of yesteryear. There is absolutely no way we're going to get them ready for the challenges of the 21st century. So back to that awareness, back to that training and retraining and collaboration across the board, so that at the end of the day, what we're thinking about is the Nigerian child. How do we make things better for the Nigerian child? How do we ensure that we move away from the rote learning and all of the memorization and equip the Nigerian child with all the necessary tools to survive and to engage positively and effectively with the 21st century? So back to the drawing board, we look at our policies and retrain teachers on learn and learn new things and embrace technology. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Learning, unlearning, and relearning. And I must let you know that at our end, the school media, I thought I mentioned it the other time that we have trained over 1,500 teachers of federal unity colleges. So many of them are even qualified through this training as certified innovative educators. And Microsoft innovative educators, they're already certified. That's what we are doing as per the public schools, federal government colleges. So, Mr. Aribisala, you're going to give us your last thought, but I'm going to challenge you for one thing, because you talked about local language. I'm a Yoruba man. I'm sorry for those of us that are not speaking Yoruba here. Mr. Aribisala, you're going to give us a last thought, but I want you to say something in Yoruba. That is, just say digital education is good. Say it in Yoruba. Digital education is good. If you say it in Yoruba and you give your last thought.
Okay, that's a big challenge for digital education in Yoruba, but digital education that I'm not completely 100% compliant there. I'm struggling to say what digital education is in Yoruba, but I think that my two panelists have done an excellent work closing out, so I don't have a lot, to touch on. A few things I would say that what do we live with? How do we make education more accessible to the millions of children that we have and are coming on board? How do we make it more affordable so that they are not excluded? And how do we make it more impactful? And I agree with my two panelists. It is impossible to do it without the teachers. Education, technology is a platform. We need the teachers, so we need to train them and train them. You'll be shocked to find out that 1 out of every 3 states is still owing teacher salaries. How do you get the best from them when we don't even pay them? They have to do other things to keep their livelihood, meaning that they can't focus professionally on training the children in school. So there are serious decisions that we need to make. If we look at the cadres of different professions, teachers are properly the least catered for nationally here. And if we say that we want to improve education and it's an SDG goal, that shouldn't be happening. I know the government can't do it alone. Corporate needs to be more involved, but I think we need to all reflect on what we can all do to make a difference. Then I'll just leave riding on the back of Mrs. Dafeta's experiential learning discussion. I remember 1999, you can look it up. There is the Computer in the World project that was done in India. It's a perfect example of experiential learning. They looked for an area where there are a lot of kids, put in a computer in the wall and left it there and the keyboard. They came back in a few months, all those children had learned how to program and how to code. No instructor. They experimented, they made mistakes, and they discovered. And the things you discover, you can never forget. So they say that there is nothing more serious than a child having fun. We need to bring fun back into the learning place, and we need to do that urgently so that children look forward to going to school. You don't have to force them shouting and screaming, but the teachers have a big role to play in that. We need to make the teachers happier to come to work so that they can give our children the experience that we have. There's a difference between showing a child an elephant and taking the child to the zoo. When the child sees an elephant, the child never forgets it. And that's the kind of experience that we need to be to create, not only for children, but even across all our tiers of education. We do a lot of simulation now as a replacement, and we find that people learn better and they retain it better by using simulation as against theoretical transfer of knowledge from the instructor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adibisala. Sorry, I apologize. I was trying to teach you. I was trying to force you to to make a statement. I'm going to make that statement actually in Yoruba. I'm going to make it, because by the power conferred on me as a moderator, I'm going to, Mrs. Dafeta talked about the Yoruba teacher in their school. I don't know whether Yoruba teacher is listening to you now. So, Mrs. Sarah, you're going to say that in Yoruba. I can see at least there's Yoruba in your name. So, Mrs. Amelia Dafeta, I don't know where you come from in Nigeria. You're going to help me. You're going to say that thing in your local language, that digital education is good. So let me start from Mrs. Dafeta. Please, where you come from? Tell us where you come from, and then you say digital education is good in your language. Just say it. Say it in your local dialect. Okay.
Let me form it.
Okay.
In the local dialect, you don't have technology. So iwere technology wee kụzie mmadụ ọmaka.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay. Mrs. Ojugo.
I'm laughing out loud. So I'm Yoruba, but I'm married to an Igbo man, so I'm Igbo. But since Mrs. Dafeta has spoken Igbo, I would not tell you that.
I didn't speak Igbo per se.
You formed it.
Dialect.
Okay. So the truth is, I had absolutely no idea, like Mr. Aribisala, and I'm like, digital Yoruba, I don't understand, I'm not sure. But one of the attendees, I put something in the chat room, and if you permit me, I would like to read it, but I had no idea until he wrote it. And I'm like, oh, that sounds, but I can read it, but I had no idea. So I should read it.
No, don't worry.
Okay, I shouldn't worry. Thank you. So I had no idea until I said, I'm like, oh, that's true.
Okay, since I'm a Yoruba man, head and tail, I'm a Yoruba man. Now, let me now say it to you. Ẹ̀kọ́ ayárabíàṣá, ẹ̀kọ́ ẹ̀rọ ayárabíàṣá dára. Ẹ̀kọ́ ẹ̀rọ ayárabíàṣá dára. Thank you. So I got 100%. It's been a fantastic session. Thank you very much, Mrs. Amelia Dafeta. You have done a fantastic job today. We're clapping for you digitally. I'm so impressed, and everyone's so impressed. That's the Director of Education, Corona Schools Trust Council. We appreciate you for coming, for doing that fantastic job, Mrs. Beishara Ojugo, the Principal of Green Springs School, Lekki. We appreciate you. Mr. Poluso Adebisala, Chief Executive Officer, Workforce Group. We appreciate you. You have made the day great. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of our listeners. Thanks so much for coming this afternoon. And I must also let you know, for instance, Mrs. Dafeta and Mrs. Ojugo, please expose your student for exam party. We are coming for you. It's a pocket-sized app that you can always access. But we'll come for you for that later. Not here, but when you leave this place, you can go to the Google Play Store and download it. But we'll come for you later. Just pocket size. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you. It's a fantastic session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See how
Bye.
our language sounds very sweet. Thank you for Mrs. Amelia for bailing us out. I'm Igbo, and I wonder how I would have said it. So thank you once again to our speakers and our moderator for the very informative and educative conversations. Like some people will say, we are bellyful. We are fully equipped, and we are determined to deploy everything that we have learned here in this conference in our different corners. I also want to mention here that we have over 1,000 students currently participating in the conference at our Student Technology Experience Centers of School Media Nigeria Limited in over 93 Federal Unity Colleges currently across the 6 geopolitical zones in the country. So they are watching the conferences in groups, so you may not see them here, but they are in groups at the different centers. And I'm very, very sure they have learned a lot. So I speak on behalf of them. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so proceeding to Queen's College once again, I hope we can get your student innovative showcase now. Queen's College, are you ready for us?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. Let's have you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Yehiri Kaya, and here is Turali Kulokan. Together we are team Sarah from Queen's College, Java, Lagos. As Team Senior, we created WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a mobile application created or designed to help the deaf and the mute all over the world to communicate with other people effectively. According to research, WHO discovered that over 466 million people in the world are suffering from hearing loss. And study conducted showed that 8.5 million of people in Nigeria are suffering from ear problems. Then the study review prevalence shows that over 8 to 10% of people are suffering from speech impairments, and this set of people are actually suffering from current communication deficits. Other hearing disabilities are due to earwax, accumulation of earwax, accumulation of fluids in the eardrum, damage of the eardrum, also objects of the ear canal, different hearing infections, and so on.
Muteness may be due to aphasia, that is, problems with coordination of muscles involved in speech. Another cause may be a medical condition which impacting the physical structures involved in speech. For example, loss of voice due to injury or paralysis. A good number of these people are not going shopping, traveling, or schooling. They cannot even see the doctor. They cannot even see a doctor without the assistance of someone. This has caused them lack of socialization, inability to get good jobs, and many more.
Voice out, a mobile application which is designed to help hearing impaired people and youth communicate all over the world together. The application is designed to convert sign languages to text and voice languages, and voices and sign languages, and voices to sign languages. It can also be used for video communication. Our unique features ensures interpretation to other languages and teaches 4 sign languages. Voice out also has an emergency section where the hearing impaired and mute people will be able to alert others when they're in danger or emergency situations. An emergency icon is provided where the person in danger will be able to select his chosen contact or the Nigeria Emergency Center. Voice out will immediately send out an alert and also will enable the user to send its location to its specific contacts.
Our other features, the other features are teaching the 4 sign language, which are Irish Sign Language, American Sign Language, American Sign Language, British Sign Language, and French Sign Language, including emergency calls, which will be allowing them to ensure that they know their sign languages. Translating voice to sign language and translating text to and sign language to text, which is enabling them to know their sign languages and enabling them to communicate very well with people speaking in different languages. A platform of good chat where the users can communicate, and also a platform where they can be able to use video calls and voice calls. A section for encouragement words and motivational speech, enabling of the use of video calls, and a platform and another section for them to have the quiz and games dealing with sign languages.
Research findings shows that the mobile app will be able to access global space with the market size value at $108 million, $108 million, $400,000 in 2016, and it's expected to increase as at 2023 as I estimate some for $311 million for $249,000. This is going to be an opportunity in Nigeria as we'll be able to gain from the market share. This is why voice out application is of utmost importance, as the app will be able to stand in test of time in the whole world, as the whole world will teach so. This is our welcome page. Our login page. Let us imagine a world with voice out, where communication and interaction will be made easier among the deaf and mute and further. The world in a global village, along with the features involved in our app, will be able to aid the life of the deaf and the mute and make their life better. Thank you.
Thank you, Queen's College. That was amazing. So they worked on an app idea to assist people who are impaired in hearing and speaking. Thank you for that innovation. That was really, really awesome. So before we round up, we'll quickly take a video break of our partner, Exam Paddy, and our gold sponsor, Stanbic IBTC. Let's watch the video.
Get an edge when preparing for exams. Download the Exam Paddy app to help you practice for your final exams. By downloading the Exam Paddy app, you will be able to take CBT exams. You can practice for Junior WAEC, Senior WAEC, NACO, JAMB, SAT, and Common Entrance. The app is specially designed for primary school students, junior secondary school students, and senior secondary school students. Using the mobile app, a student will be able to learn from Nigerian curriculum-based materials and the best quality tutorial videos. Choose from hundreds of lesson videos on Exam Paddy. Sign up now and join the future of learning. Check out our website exampaddy.ng and download the mobile app version from Google Play Store. Exam Paddy. Exams just got easier.
Stanbic IBTC.
Set I want.
909.
Artist wallet.
Gigi. Stanbic IBTC. Gang. 909. Gang. Whoa, it can be. Gang. When you use 909. Gigi. Send money via 909. Gang. Buy airtime via 909. Gang. Sub data via 909. Gang. Pay bills via 909. Gang. That's the 909 ash. Gang. Money miss road and no cash. Gang. How you go do birthday bash? Gang. That's the 909 ash. Gang. 909 is the gang code. Gang. Dial am now with all phones. Gang. Run that deal with the swift flow. Gang. Make you bust my brain with the whole show. Gang. Just try am now if you don't know. No darling for the gang code. Stanbic IBTC finish work code. Use Artist wallet if you want code. Set I want gang, 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 gang. 909 gang, gang. Pay bills gang, gang. Account opening gang. Set I want loan approved gang. Send me your account number gang. Credit alert gang. Gang, gang, gang. Star 909 ash is your new code. One before ash if you want code. Sake of the super app, no app. You've got code but you're not gang. In fact, we are all gang. Gang where they use sharp code. Gang where they move. Gang where they send moolah. Gang where sword be last. This gang is your short code. Dial star 909 hash to join the gang today.
Thank you, everyone. So this officially brings us to the end of the third edition of the EduTech conference. My name is Chinyere Emeruwa from EduTech Education First Nigeria Limited. It's been a very long day and we thank God for the success of this annual event. On behalf of the President of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Bisi Adeyemi, and the Chief Executive Officer of Education First Nigeria Limited, Mr. Moses Imaye, I want to express our appreciation to all our panelists and moderators who have taken time to be with us today despite their tight schedule. I would also want to express our special gratitude to our sponsors, Stanbic IBTC. We thank UBEC as well for endorsing the conference as usual. We are proud of all our students that made presentations today and their colleagues that also participated virtually together in groups. We are grateful for the educators that joined from different schools, particularly the Federal Unity Colleges and other educational institutions, and every one of you that joined in from different parts of the country. And kudos to the LET committee of the Chamber that have been working day and night for the success of this event. We believe that next year, we will all be alive and well to move the wheel of education forward. We shall do this again together. Thank you and enjoy the rest of